Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for your time for joining AI Accelerate Build this morning. My name is Paul Beck. I work with UK-based software companies to help them build AI solutions and then help them go to market as well. So welcome to AI Accelerate Build. This is designed for UK software companies to help them build generative AI solutions, but also then we'll talk about how you can go to market with Microsoft and how we'll amplify you into our global customer base as part of that. So this is a deep dive session into some of the technologies you can use to build your own generative AI solutions and also copilots as part of that. So before I hand over to the technical team, Adair Ron, to talk through that tool set and the technology piece today, I want to talk through some of the high-level programs that you can join and use to get help from Microsoft again on how you can build these solutions. So firstly, well, the great news is we have fantastic programs. Firstly, for starters and scale-ups, we have Founders Hub, which, as its name suggests, is for early stage and growing organizations, Series C funded and below. And then once you graduate from Founders Hub, you can join ISV Success, which is for B2B software companies, or you can apply to join. Both of those programs come with free credits, free licenses, lots of technical and commercial support to help you build generative AI solutions, but also then instruct you on how you can go to market with Microsoft as well. So they're both underpinned by that go to market journey as part of that as well. So we've got a great agenda for you today. Next slide, please, Adair. So obviously I'm doing the welcome and intro bit at the moment. I'm now going to very shortly hand over to Adair, who will take you through some of the innovations that are coming out around Microsoft and the OpenAI stack. We'll then hand over to Amit, who will take you through the actual deep dive elements in terms of how you build your own copilot, and we'll have questions at the end. So you should be able to see somewhere on your screen the Q&A button. So please post any questions in that, and we'll deal with those questions at certain points along the journey. We won't take them ad hoc. We'll break for questions just to retain the flow because there's lots of information to give you today. In addition, we'll also be posting links in that chat as to how you can engage with the various programs that I've mentioned as well. Next slide, Adair. So these are the programs that I mentioned previously, Founders Hub, and then on to the ISV Success as well. And you can see the go-to-market journey underneath those both. Next slide. So you'll hear a 3-hour session today on how you can go about building your generative AI solution. Hopefully that will give you a really good grounding and you'll be able to crack on and do that. But we also have lots of other events and hacks to help you do this. On the screen, you can see a 2-day partner-led hack. This is supported by Microsoft as well, but actually driven by Ascent, one of our AI expert partners here in the UK. And you can go to aka.ms/AI Accelerate Build, bit of a mouthful, but down the bottom there. And that has all of our curated resources like these hacks, but also other first-party, third-party events to help you build as well. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have Crayon as well on the 13th and 14th of March as well as part of that. It's fair to say that a lot of these partners as well that are running these hacks supported by Microsoft also have access to Azure Innovate funding. What that means effectively is for successful applications, organizations and software companies can actually get funding via the partner to help build these generative AI applications as well. It's a great way to get started as part of that. Anyway, that concludes my intro and the high level piece. I'm now happy to hand over to Adair, who's going to take you through the innovation piece.
Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Adair Ron. I'm the CTO team lead for EMEA on Microsoft for Startups. I'll be kickstarting the day with future-proofing your startup with kind of talking about the latest innovations from Microsoft and OpenAI, and more specifically for startups and ISVs, how can you take all of that and kind of embrace it into building your own copilot, or doing what we call AI pivots, which means trying to take your original idea and rethink it in the age of AI or based on an AI platform. And this is something we're seeing happening across the board. We saw that happening when mobile emerged. So a lot of existing ideas need to repivot or reimagine their idea based on that platform. Similarly happened when the internet came up, or even all the way back to Windows itself. AI is definitely a new platform today, and we're seeing this emerge and burst all the way. So thinking about future-proofing your startup and doing those AI pivots are more important now than ever. As this transcends, a lot of startups can't sit on the side and say, okay, I'm not doing anything with AI. I'm not an AI startup, so that revolution has nothing to do with me. At this point, we're talking about platform. And when something becomes a platform, every startup has to do something with it to build on top of it or to leverage it to some extent. So let's talk a little bit about why that is, why it's happening, and why we think AI is definitely a platform in terms of the journey of embracing it today. So obviously AI is everywhere. I'm not going to go through all of those titles. If you've been, since ChatGPT was announced about a year plus, you've seen all of those reports and articles. So there's nothing that I can tell you that can really amplify this. But one piece of information that I found extremely interesting in a recent MIT Sloan Management review that we've done is 87% of organizations actually believe that AI will give them the competitive edge, which means AI is not a nice to have niche platform as it used to be for years. People thought about this as, okay, if I do better with my data, I will be better, or maybe try to do a little bit better in my industry. It's now becoming a main competitive edge for a lot of those organizations. What that means for startups is that when they're trying to look for solutions, AI and AI-powered solutions will be a main angle or lens that they will try to explore and evaluate those solutions. And that goes all the way, and we're seeing this from the enterprise and B2B solutions that we're trying to work with startups to open the door for enterprises, but also when we're talking to VCs and other entrepreneurs. I mean, you probably saw the currently not addressing AI, or not putting AI front and center in your pitch, makes it way harder to get a meeting or a pitch meeting either with an enterprise or with an investor. And that trend is also just going to be more and more effective as we go. So it's not just about looking at the trend in the articles, it's really understanding that becomes a pivotal competitive edge for a lot of the companies and vice versa across the industry. So let's talk about the reason why I think Microsoft and a lot of you are here. And it's basically started off with our investment with OpenAI. So OpenAI was a startup. It's actually some of it was with the very early on investment way before ChatGPT was announced. And I think the idea behind what we've done, just to put it into some perspective, is we've actually provided the world's most powerful supercomputer. There's a lot of it, and probably some of it you can use today, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We took some of the world's most capable foundation models from hosted like OpenAI to open source, and we'll talk about this as part of the roadmap for Microsoft, and where would we go from here. And combined with the world's best AI dev infrastructure. And we'll talk a lot about this today because I'm quite certain that you know Azure at this point. So you know we have a very strong supercomputer, and you probably know the foundation models either from OpenAI or from the open source. But how do we actually take all of that together into something that creates an application or builds a platform? This is really around the AI dev infrastructure. And some of the areas where AI stops being just a data scientist role and becomes an application, CTO, and VP R&D, and a platforms discussion as well. And this is a big part of building your own copilot. It's not just about putting ChatGPT or GPT-4 Turbo and that's it, you have it. And I think understanding the orchestration model and thinking about all of the power and efforts that Microsoft is building to this with everything we have, by the way, with Azure, with GitHub, and stitching it all together is quite important to that partnership. So I think it's bringing everything together into something that can really become meaningful in building an application powered by AI with the foundation model, with the computers, with the cloud, and with the AI dev infrastructure. And I think one of the greatest examples was actually ChatGPT itself. So that is the fastest growing consumer product in history. And we are seeing a lot of people not just getting onboarded, but actually remaining and sticking and not willing to go back. If you ever experienced working with ChatGPT, then you probably know that sensation or that sentiment that I'm talking about. That is completely running on Azure, backed our databases and developed by our tools. So that's a really good example, that specific product of that, everything we just talked, the power of the supercomputer, the foundational models, and then all of the applications from the dev perspective that allow this magic to happen. And when we're thinking about what we offer to some of the startups that are in our programs, and it is talking about deploying your data. We'll talk a little bit today about LLM ops, and Amit will show you some really good examples and how to activate functions. But on top of all of it, we have the foundation models that you know and love from OpenAI. That means GPT-4, GPT-4 Turbo, GPT 3.5 Turbo, and then some of the multi-models ones, which are becoming increasingly interesting, like GPT-4 with Vision, and obviously DALL-E 3. So up until now, we talked a little bit about where we are in terms of the history, what happened with Microsoft and OpenAI, and what do we offer today. Now let's switch gears and talk a little bit from a startup perspective. And we know that most startups are looking at this and they're thinking, what is my journey? How do I take my existing idea, my existing IP, and trying to recompile it, revamp it into something that talks AI or really feels very natural in this AI world? This is why we call it future-proofing your startup, or AI pivots. This is something that is extremely important, not just to address what is happening between Microsoft and OpenAI, but how this implicates you. And we've built this. This is some of an internal model that we built in Microsoft for Startups to try and build your generative AI adoption journey. Now, while we'll spend a lot of time talking about the scaling and innovating, because this will be the core of this session today in terms of building your own services, creating your own copilots, why that matters, how do you do it, how do you stitch it all together, I do want to spend a few minutes on the first parts, because I've seen a lot of startups trying to jump into innovating and scaling without really understanding the power of that platform. What we really recommend people is to do exploration and piloting first. So you need to walk that walk before starting to shoot it out for your customers. So in that crawl, walk, run phase, you need to start with a crawl, walk first, and that is by exploring ChatGPT or some of those AI capabilities internally first before getting it to your customers, to make sure you feel comfortable with it. You understand what that can do, what that can't do, what is responsible AI, what do you do with permissions, what do you do when hallucinations. A lot of those thinkings are very easily trying to be mitigated when it's still on the exploration and piloting mode, way before you scale and innovate. And there's a few areas that we see a lot of startups really taking generative AI to enhancing productivity or building some of the resilience. Those are the four main themes. If you're not doing any of them today, I would strongly recommend to start, because this is a great way for you to first understand the technology, do that walk before run phase, and really embrace both what that technology can do and also what it can't do. So content generation and code generation are probably some of the most meaningful examples today. Obviously, we can do this with ChatGPT or with GitHub Copilot. And then there's some examples with semantic search and summarization that goes all the way to automation. I took the liberty of putting all of it into a slide. This is a really good slide for you to try and even capture if you can, because those are the places where we've seen business problems across startups. What are some of the needs, and then how that can be solved with generative AI. So let's walk clearly and simply around all of them. First one is around productivity. And I would say that to increase productivity, generative AI is a great tool to do internally. Code generation and documentation is probably the best one. So if you haven't used or haven't started using GitHub Copilot, we'll see some examples. That's a really good place for you to explore what Copilot can do. Before we try and offer it to your customers, try to use it internally. Anything around automation. And I strongly, and I'm a strong believer in this in terms of boosting your productivity internally in a startup, because working with startups, we know that automation is something we usually save for last. It used to take a lot of resources, and you want to do things fast, and sometimes doing it manually and repetitively is quicker than trying to put all of those rules into something programmatic. But ChatGPT and generative AI actually changed this dramatically, and we see some examples of this, for example, on the support side. That's a really good place for you to try and take customer experience, which is the third thing, and try to automate it to some extent to bringing some of that value directly to your customers while understanding that technology. And obviously, marketing, sales, content generation, that is a strong and prime place for you to try and explore this on your own. Let's look at a quick demo on how to do this internally. And again, what I want you to emphasize in this demo is how easy it is to actually build this experience based on what we can do with generative AI, not just from what you're getting, but actually how easy what is to build that automation. So it's not just about the end results, it's also about the process. Because again, remember, on the pilot and explore phase, we're actually trying to evaluate this technology before offering it out externally. So support is something that we know all startups love to do. I mean, if I can talk to a startup and tell them, what do you prefer to do? Sales, R&D, or support? Obviously, support will be the first one. Joking, of course, that's something that is usually very important, but bottom of the line in terms of investment. And this is a prime place for you to try and replace some of those virtual agents and traditional agents that are based on Q&A pairs and process decision, and try to automate it to some extent with an Azure OpenAI powered one. So you can see this, and I'll jump on the I-18 freeway. I'll jump quickly because you can see some of the how do we do automation. There's a link that you can explore this by yourself. What we can do here is take a call recording or an audio, use Azure Speech to really take this and build it as a raw input. And then once you have that raw input, and you can see it here, we can just use ChatGPT and Azure OpenAI to take that raw input and build it into something that is easily automated into any of your support system, whether it's CRM or any of the other systems. So you can see there's a raw input from the chat. We had a guided chat in terms of trying to get that data, and then we got it into JSON. Now that seems cool, right? But there's a lot of unstructured, structured APIs out there. What is most interesting here is that the actual instructions were written in English as well. And this is where I think the power of OpenAI is really shines, because it's not just about the end result, it's about the process itself. So you can see here that what actually made that magic. It was not code. Everybody could do this. Even an intern can do this as long as you understand the process. It just said you must extract the following information. Take call reason, take it as key reason. Take clause, put it as cause. Make sure fields 1 to 6 are answered very short. Location has to be a location name. Put it as JSON and then format output as results and then print it together. So it's not just about the answer that was very fitted. It's the actual automation itself of the process was generated in English, which means that you can take any process automation, which used to be a big headache and required a lot of investments from your perspective into putting the APIs and the developers, and now even a power user that just understand the processing and describe it in English can do this. And that is the big power of OpenAI. It's not just about putting it in the hands of your customers. It's about understanding what it can do internally to what some of the things that you're doing. If you want to test it yourself, you want to download the code and start using it. And as I mentioned, we're not going to do a lot of the pilot explore because I do want to get into the innovation side. But I would urge you, if you're not doing anything today with automation or with content creation or with GitHub Copilot, for example, please start with it. This is a great example for you to educate and internally understand within your teams what that can do. So go to that website and try this. And again, anything that you want to change, it's just simple, plain English, and that is easily changeable. Okay, so once we covered this and you feel like the teams are understanding the capacity and what the scaling, and also internally how to really understand and some of the scaling challenges of generative AI. Now let's talk about how do we take it forward into the scale and innovate. And with this, I will start with something that is still a bit of a question in some of in some of the discussions that we're seeing online. I would say that I would put definitely a period here instead of a question mark, but that's a slide, so I'm not going to change it. But I don't think that there's a question now. There's a next platform shift. I think that there's a big exclamation mark here. It is a next platform shift. There is an age of AI copilots. You may call it assistants, you may see the GPTs and the GPT store that was just announced a few days ago, but there is a big pivotal change that is shifting a lot of the computers world into AI copilots. And there's a reason for it. And it's not just because AI is a great technology, because it has been a great technology for years now. Something pivotal happened when generative AI, and specifically ChatGPT, was introduced to the world, is changing a lot of the things that are relevant to you as a startup. So even if you've said, okay, AI is here, it has been here for a while, what is the big difference now? Why should I shift any of my IP or my roadmap as a startup to start choosing or future-proofing my startup with AI? I would say that there's a big reason to do it, right? Because there is a platform shift. And let's talk a little bit about why that is a platform shift. So Bill Gates, one of my former boss, was the one that stated that platforms, when the economic value of everybody that uses it exceeds the value of the company that created it. And you can think out on a lot of platforms that actually really embodies that idea. So for example, let's take Apple and the iPhone. Obviously, mobile is a big platform. There's no discussion around that. But if you think about the App Store and everything that brought, the equivalence or the economic value of the App Store and some of the amazing companies that was built because of that mobile, new form factor, companies like Uber, like Spotify, like Airbnb, they're worth together much more than the platform owner itself. And when you're thinking about something and all of the things that could be built upon it, and you can think about the ratio in terms of the economic value, it really brings you into the idea or the understanding that there's a big platform that you need to address at this point. But let's talk a little bit about why that is. And I think this is really important to understand because that has nothing to do with AI. That has everything to do with users and user interaction. And I think adoption is a key part of understanding why that actually boomed in the way that it is, and why in someday you just woke up and everybody was talking about generative AI and ChatGPT, and nobody could really anticipate that. And it's not because of the technology; it's because of the implication and the adoption. And this is when you really embrace this and really understand that. You understand why it matters for you to future-proof your startup with those technologies today. So think about every traditional startup that you've actually built or every company you actually created. So when you go into the market, there's a small amount of features, small amount of complexity. It's very noob friendly. Just open the window. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do. And the IP, while it's very basic, it's very easy to understand. So it's very easy to understand what your app is trying to do. But that is a starting point for every startup. And what happens is that when you're adding more complexity to your IP, you're actually adding more complexity that is needed for the user to understand. You're building more screens, you're adding more complexity, more wizards, more radio buttons, more combo boxes, a lot of things that the user need to understand in order to start working on your IP or making the most out of it. And again, supporting advanced scenarios means supporting complex scenarios as well. This is the equivalent. So complexity usually falls directly on the user. And while the user really knows what he wants to do, he doesn't just need to understand what he wants to do, but also how your application expects him to describe what he wants to do. What is the right screen? Where is the right place for him? What is the right options? What is your support mechanism? What is the changes that happen? And at some point in time, you will need the manual to start understanding how to explore and do the best of what you can with your application. And then, it goes very quickly to the WTF and IKEA furniture place. Every application in the world, whether it's basic or not, went through this. And I'm not going to talk about, other people's applications. Let's talk about Microsoft. Okay, so when we announced Office like 30 plus years ago, or even 40, if I recall correctly, that was a very simple application. Now, if I'm asking you today if you are using 100% of what Word, Excel, or PowerPoint is actually offering you, you would probably laugh. You would probably tell me if I'm doing 10% of what that application offers, I think I'm a very, experienced user. And you will be right. So we are working on platform products that are super, everybody's using them. They're super widespread. But at the end of the day, introducing new features to them became like something that maybe a fraction of the users will actually embrace. And that's not because the features are not relevant. It's because that complexity slash functionality factor is so high on an application that has so big, a lot of mileage across it, that at that point, it's really hard to educate or to get to the users to learn something new. Now, I would say 10 years or even 15 years ago, what we've done is we actually offered courses. It seems very, if you talk to someone today that downloads an application and tell them, go to a 5-day course of Office, he would laugh at your face. Because, if someone has downloaded an app and he doesn't understand in 30 seconds how to use it, he will probably delete it. But that was how we tried to fix it. We had like courses for those complex scenarios, those complex applications, whether it's Office, whether it's Windows, whether it's Photoshop. There was a lot of complexity, and we try to mitigate it with doing some training or instruction to the user. But that just created, and you can see this here in this picture, this issue. Instead of something that would be super easy and super, new friendly for the users, we made all of that complexity and that cognitive load fall on the users. Now, what you can see about those two slides, it has nothing to do with AI. That is a problem that happens across every application, every industry, every domain, from small companies all the way to Microsoft and Adobe. So the examples that I put, in every application will go through that eventually, because you do want to make sure that you're adding more functionality, and then that in time brings more complexity. Now, what a copilot does at the sense of it, and you can call it copilot, assistant, GPT, whatever. That's not the title is not important. What is important is what it does, and the application is using modern AI to assist you with complicated cognitive tasks, which means it takes that thing that you just saw, that every time you complicate or add more complexity to your IP, that cognitive load falls on the users, and try to change that formula. That's something that works for the users instead of against them. And how it does that, if you think about what generative AI actually brought to the world, it brought two meaningful things that are actually aimed to fixing that problem. One is it understands natural language, and it understands very complicated natural language. So you can describe a very complicated scenario in plain English or any other language, and it will understand what you want to do. So you can think it and you can convey it in speech or in text, then it can understand what you're trying to do. There's no need for a lot of screens and options and something that is super complicated. A user that understands what he wants to do with your IP can just describe what he wants to do. He can do it naturally. It can do it as easily as you would describe it to a person, and that's it. And then the second piece, which is even more interesting, and we'll deep dive around this up quite a bit today, is the reasoning engine. Since it understands English, it also has a lot of reasoning across understanding your IP as well. So that could be a mitigator between understanding English, so understanding your user, and understanding and reasoning with what your IP is trying to do. And that could provide as an agent, a direct agent between users and your IP and your APIs, to try and take this intent from the natural language perspective, understand how to plug it with the reasoning engine directly to your APIs, and then invoking specifically what the user wanted without adding any complicated or cognitive load into the user. This is a fundamental change in what computers and the computer world is doing, again, across every domain and every industry. And the good and interesting thing about it, it has nothing to do with AI. That was a fundamental problem before generative AI even came about. And generative AI is a way to fix it. But if you're trying to think about the problem, the core problem here was not AI. AI is actually a means to solve it. So trying to think about, again, a co-pilot, and that maybe puts you into some of that perspective of why that matters. and I'm going to repeat this again, it's the application is to use modern AI, not necessarily build or put AI front and center. It's just to use it to assist users with complicated cognitive tasks. Now, I want to give you one example. I briefly mentioned it in the pilot and explore phase, but if you haven't used it, that's a great place to start. And it's with GitHub. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what happened behind the scenes. Now, think about GitHub Copilot. Now, it seems very, for those of you who know it, it seems like, it's a very AI powered and focused tool, and you all use it and love it. But GitHub and Visual Studio actually had nothing to do with AI. And I would argue that probably a lot of the startups that I'm working with were at the same place. They had their own trajectory, their own roadmap. It had nothing to do with AI. So it had some, cool, nice niche features. And then when that feature and when that capability emerged, they completely did shifting and pivoted towards that place. And that didn't actually offer new capabilities to the tool itself, only in how to interact with it. So let's see an example of how AI Copilot is actually what it actually does. If you haven't seen it, and again, I would strongly urge you to start using it for your developers in terms of productivity. So look at this, and that's I would say some of the most sophisticated UX that you've ever seen. There's a GitHub Copilot on the one side, there's the traditional UX on the other side, and there's a line in the middle. By the way, most of the copilots that we're building and a lot of the copilots that we're building with our startups, this is how it is, because we want to keep the traditional for people that want to work the way that they are used to with a tool, but we also want to offer a new way for you to work. So instead of starting with the traditional UX and that, black canvas, you can start talking to the application. That application can talk to a lot of the IP and the code base and everything that it has. You can discuss with GitHub Copilot what it would be a good mechanism to solve a bug, to write a code, to build something. And then when it makes sense, you just copy it to the traditional UX and maybe do some customizable change on it. So the starting point doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional UX when all of the cognitive load falls on you as a user, but actually something that can be fall or mitigated through AI. So again, that's an example, and I wanted to get you to the sense of how Microsoft and GitHub are actually looking at an example. And now I want to share some statistics with you. And you'll recall that when we're talking about Office and new features, if we're getting to like a few percent of adoption, that is something that we find extremely valuable. Now, GitHub Copilot has some really interesting stats around it. 46% of new code is now written with AI. Now take a second to think about that. This is one feature on a product that has a lot of mileage on it, that 50% of the code that is now being written is being written through this this area. So from adoption perspective, we're not talking about a few percentage. We're talking about something that is almost half of what is happening with this platform is going through Copilot at some extent. Could be smaller extent, and then a lot of the customization is happening on traditional. It could be something that is copy paste and then you commit it directly. But people actually opted for this option, and this is on a product that is well built, has a lot of people that are very strict on how they use it, and they still opted to change. 75% of them are feeling more satisfied. And again, I'm not going to take you into the statistics of how we've seen it previously, but we've rarely seen numbers like that around any features on GitHub or on Microsoft itself. So that means that people feel so much satisfied with that capability. And so we're ticking the box on adoption. Again, 50%, crazy number in terms of how many people are using it. 75% are actually more satisfied. And then it's actually better for the enterprise itself because 96% of developers are faster. So having something that is built on that platform of AI, and again, for GitHub and Visual Studio, companies that or products that had nothing or very little to do with AI up until this point, and now did an AI pivot and put it front and center in the most basic way of like putting a line, there's an AI here, there's the traditional here, just you choose what you want to do. and look at those numbers. Those are quite fascinating, and I think this is a really call to action for a lot of the startups here to understand what that can do for every IP, whether it's an AI-based IP, but even if it's not, like GitHub and Copilot, which is something that had their own trajectory, their own roadmap. That technology came and emerged. They implemented it very quickly, and those are the numbers. We recently launched this website, and I would strongly recommend to everybody that is trying to understand specifically what to do with AI and with that generative AI on their application to explore it. It's aka.ms/WTI. It's all of the learnings that Microsoft had across all of our copilots. What are people using? What are they not using? What was heavily adopted? What made them faster? You can see it examples from Teams, from Dynamics, from Windows, from GitHub. So there's a lot of, you can think that of Satya and a lot of the companies or the applications across Microsoft. Satya actually did AI pivots to them on a massive scale. And there was a time, I think, in 2023, like every 2 weeks, you would get announcement of a new Copilot by Microsoft, because we actually understood that with the complexity of the products within Microsoft, it makes very little sense to just add more features. It's time to focus on the bigger problem, which is adoption. So a lot of the products actually halted or paused their roadmap around adding more features to the IP and pivoted all to building on that AI platform to talk on to tackle that adoption capabilities. And we did this in a very wide scale experiment. The results are here. I strongly urge you to test it. And I know a lot of you already have their roadmaps, and you know that every feature that you're planning is the best feature and is very crucial. But a question you need to ask yourself is, what is the adoption rate of those new features? And should we invest in a new feature with very little adoption rate, or should we invest in increasing adoption rate across our existing features? And this could be really powered by AI across every application that you're doing. There's a lot of startups we already worked with, and some of the enterprise companies, Duolingo and Shopify and BT Group, and more and more. You can see some of those examples here, which did that specifically. So hopefully, up until now, you understood that AI, or future-proofing your application with AI, has nothing to do with AI at Sense. It's really understanding adoption problem on some of the complexity issues that we're seeing across the world of every application, every industry. And you as a startup, this is something that you definitely need to explore regardless to what is your domain. So this is the recipe for how you build your own Copilot. One is take foundational models. This is, as we've seen, they have the natural language aspect. They have the reasoning engine aspect, which helps them being the best mitigator for what user trying to convey what they want to do and how your IP or APIs can understand. The second piece, and it is really important to understand, it is needed. We'll see some examples right now on how to build it, is the startup graph data. So in order for the reasoning engine to talk specifically your language, it needs to understand you and your data. And this is a big difference between this and like ChatGPT experience, because ChatGPT will always give an answer. Whether that answer is grounded with your data or not, that's a different thing. So some people will call it hallucinations. But the thing is, if you aren't familiar with how LLM work, LLM will always give you an answer. So that's a text, text in, text out sort of API. So if you're putting it in the hands of the user, you need to ground it so firmly within your data that the answer that it would give is something that your company or IP can really represent. So this second piece, the startup graph data, is extremely important to make sure that the foundational model acts on your behalf and would really give an answer that is relevant to your IP, to your startup, and not a generic natural language. And then the third part is thinking or rethinking about the app experience. Now, you've seen some examples here, like the UX decision of putting a line and saying, this is Copilot, this is traditional, you choose where you want to start. We've seen some other startups doing different things, including thinking about a search box or a question box, or some of them trying to re-implement bot service to some extent. I would say that there's no a real answer here. We'll see some or explore some ideas here on a meet session as well. But definitely it's worth thinking about the app experience. How do you put it front and center in a way that feels natural to you users, but will also keep the traditional UX for them as a safety net? Because Copilot means that there's always going to be a pilot. So traditional UX is important. You just need to help that traditional UX with some of the learnings and some of the capabilities that may come from a Copilot experience or LLM. One last thing that I want to cover before talking a little bit more about how to build it is that I would call it two birds, one stone sort of scenario, because while that happens to your application and to your recipe on building your own Copilot, there's an additional thing that is happening with that platform is being super consumer focused as well. And you can see ChatGPT and time to reach 100 million users at unprecedented vertical growth, which means that apart from building a Copilot into your own traditional application, there is a way to put the same Copilot, the same investment in running on that sort of currently it's the GPT store or plugins. There's a different mechanism to that, and those are still things that are being meddled within the ecosystem. But running across the original or that application on that platform, and that goes, by the way, to ChatGPT, but also to Windows Copilot, Bing Copilot, and all of the users that brings as well. So thinking about that is not just about building your own Copilot in the Copilot stack, but also plugging into a Copilot ecosystem, which means in the same investment, you can build a Copilot that lives within your application, but is also being interchangeable by other agents as well. So that means that your top user may not even be a user. That may be Bing or maybe ChatGPT that is calling into your assistant or your Copilot to getting answers without even the user need to install anything or to go into your website. It just keeps it in their ecosystem of ChatGPT or again, Bing or Windows Copilot as well. And that is a big dramatic change, because you are trying to build something of a Copilot that touches both reach, so you may get new users, and adoption. And if you ever met, ever had a VC meeting, you know that those two words are something that VCs really like to hear. Apart from AI, of course, it's adoption, which means stickiness, and that's reach, which means users. So if you're building the right Copilot, you may publish it to the Copilot ecosystem and then expand your reach, and then you can also drive stickiness within adoption. And this is all within the same code base. So just building it once, and then you can publish it internally in your app and externally on the ecosystem. And then you can use it both for users, but also for agent to agent. And you may as well find that in 1 year from now, your top user is probably not even a human. It's another assistant that is calling upon from your ecosystem. So that's something just to think about. I know this is very preliminary at this point because we've just now announced the GPT store, and there's some things that are still happening within the plugins world. But a year from now, that would be a very strong investment to have, because the platform is there. The users are already there, both from ChatGPT, from Bing, and for Windows, and you want to tap into those user base in parallel. So what slows down generative AI adoption? All of that sounds great. So why are we not doing it right now? And we'll try to address this for the remaining session. It's obviously the biggest challenge that I'm hearing from most of the startups that I'm working with is how to get started. So we share the whole pilot, explore, scale, and innovate. And I would say this is a really good place for you to start. But how do you really, with the technology that is evolving very quickly, how do you build something and getting started? What is the starting point? And we'll try to maybe address this in future slides. I would say that the top three, the next three ones are the top three in my sense. One is development. So again, it's not enough to have foundational models, and it's not enough to have your data. Stitching it all together is something that is fundamentally changed when you're thinking about this as a platform. And you need something which will be much more than just using the LLM itself. It becomes not about the model, but more about the application. And then providing the right context, which means the data and the grounding, is becoming super important, not just for differentiation, because you want that LLM to act in your behalf and to always respond on ways that are relevant to your data and your context, and not respond what the ChatGPT.com of the world would answer. And then evaluates. It's really hard to define and optimize those use cases. Let me give you one example, and that's very interesting from an ISV that I've recently worked with. That ISV is actually building a technician-based copilot, which allows administrators and technicians to do some work, easier work within their IT. Now, they built a copilot. That copilot helped a lot of those administrators to tackle easier problems, to get solutions, to automate some of the things. That was amazing, amazing achievement. It made every technician do 10 times more than what that technician was able to do in previous models. So we would say that that startup is super happy, right? Obviously, it costs more because LLMs are not cheap, but that brought a lot of great incentives into the users. So when the first renewals started to come, they found out something that it was a bit strange in terms of evaluation. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Users came to them and said, man, you did such an awesome job that we actually require less licenses at that point because we don't need as many technicians as we used to need. So now you're paying more money because you're the one paying for the LLM. And when you're trying to renew, you renew for less users because you've done such an amazing job. That's just a thing around evaluation that you need to think before going into this place. Things that could go all the way to pricing, performance, security, evaluating, accuracy. There's a lot of things that are going all the way through scale that you need to take into account, because otherwise your success may also be like a boomerang and come back to you, and that's something that you want to avoid. And then obviously operationalize everything across, making sure that this is part of what we call LLM ops. There's an operational model for this, and we can explore this. So up until now, I tried not to talk about Azure and technology because I did want to shift this into the side of how startups and you think about this, not just spit Azure and AI on top of you, but that's what we're now. Let's switch gears a little bit and go a bit deeper into how to build this, and announce some of the public previews and the capabilities around Azure AI Studio. So Azure AI Studio is ai.azure.com. It's currently on public preview. It's we took a lot of the individual SDKs and CLIs and some of the separated UIs and the dev workspaces and just put it into one place. There's a single SDK now, single UI, single dev environment that is aimed to build everything. Because as you remember, one of the common problems of building those things is that you need to think about it as a developer, an application, not as a model. So when you're thinking about it as an application, you need a single place to manage that application in a very separate way. And you can think about the Azure AI portfolio that actually builds all of it together. So there's like the Azure AI Studio, there's a user interface and everything together. You can access all of the AI services, where is Azure OpenAI service, the documents, the speech, the vision. There's a lot of things that are made for grounding, which are some of them are on external databases like Azure AI Search, which supports RAG and semantic search and vector search. And then there's Azure Machine Learning that helps you ground, evaluate, deploy, monitor, and do some LLM ops and responsible AI. This all works on a lot of the things that we offer in our infrastructure, from Turing, GPTs, DALL-E, Meta, Hugging Face, Whisper, and more of them. So that's one place for you to build, deploy AI solution with a lot of different models and the production lifecycle. And I would really strongly urge you to think about Azure AI Studio, not just as a product, but maybe as a guideline for how it's best to build those products, because this was built from our experience on what is needed to really make this scale. And it's not about thinking of, there's a lot of product learning that is baked and best practices that are baked across the Azure AI Studio, that if you go through those guidelines, it may be easier for you to make sure that you're thinking about the things that you don't think about right now, but we thought about them for you. So that goes for all the way from exploring, comparing some of those models, evaluating what would be the right one, improving as you go, integrating into data, testing it, reviewing it, deploying it, and then monitoring it. It's like an end-to-end journey. And I did highlight one thing here that I think is extremely important. This is for AI developers. So it's not just for data scientists. I would argue that in this new model, it's even more for developers than data scientists. So this is unless you're trying to do something very meaningful, and we'll see some examples of this in a second, on building and fine-tuning those models yourself, you don't need to do a lot of data science work here. You mostly need to do a lot of developer work here. And that means that every developer you currently have has to be familiarized with the Azure AI Studio and become an AI developer. The good news is it's not super hard. And you will see, I will show you some examples. Amit will show you additional examples. So if you're familiar with code, it's not going to be super hard for you to understand. Let's see a quick example for this. So this is the Azure AI Studio. You can see I'm trying to build my own copilot. There's a build your own copilot tag here. I'm choosing that project, and then I immediately put all of the Azure AI resources in one place. So it's very easy for me to monitor it from a pricing perspective, from resource perspective, and everything that is relevant. So again, there's different sets of projects that you can create with Azure AI Studio. And I created that Copilot. There's additional ones. You can see here immediately it creates a lot of different connections for Azure AI, for cognitive search, for OpenAI. And those are the things that we usually know that are needed and already deployed for building your own Copilot. Obviously, you can change things, you can add them, you can do some evaluation, or you can create additional ones. But this is just a starting point. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of best practice here on what's best to do this. There is the chat session here, and you can start by exploring or testing what that means. Obviously, you will have to add data and indexes and bring some context into it. As we mentioned, it's not just enough to have built foundational model. You also have to have your graph data as well. But and we'll see it in a second. But there's always, all of it is coming in one place. So that's very easy for you to try and build it yourself. This is a very sneak preview of how the Azure AI Studio looks like. Now let's talk a little bit about the Copilot stack. So there's a Copilot Studio and the Copilots that we discussed, like the Microsoft and ecosystem Copilot. And then there is your Copilot. This is the UX sort of layer of the application. There's different ways and methods to create it. You've seen some examples up until now. We will show you additional ones in my session and a Meet session as well. But this is more on you. So you need to decide what is the best mechanism to introduce a Copilot into your application, whether it's something that is side-loaded, whether it's something that is baked across your application, whether it's something that is suggestive, which means if someone is coming into a screen, then you already suggest to him what is the next best thing to do and allow him to accept your suggestion. There's different ways to infuse copilots into the UX, and it's really around you to try and explore what is the best mechanism for your application. The second piece, and it's, again, this is a three-layer model similar to anything that you ever build, is a sort of business logic layer, the AI orchestration. I would argue this is the most complex but important area that you can invest in, because that would really make sure that your Copilot is accurate, is responsible, is price relevant for what you're trying to do, and you can really grow and expand this layer. This what makes the model work for you. So when we said the issue is not the model, it's the application, this is where the secret sauce of the application actually lies. And then on the last side, there's the data, there's your data, and then there's foundation model, And there's also an AI infrastructure if you're trying to train something your own. Those layers are separate, and those are separate by design, because you may want to build an orchestration model that can interchange or evaluate some of the different foundational models together. So you don't have to do every Catholic marriage to any specific vendor, not OpenAI, not Llama, not anyone else. You can build something and then try to evaluate together. This is, again, thinking not with leading with the model. And then we all love the models, we all love GPT-4 Turbo, but we don't want that to lead. We want the experience to lead. We want the application to lead. And we want everything in those models to be also hooked and interchangeable as much as possible. So let's start with the bottom layer, the AI infrastructure. So as we mentioned, when you're building your own Copilot, there's a few ways for you to do this. There's the ready-made, which means adding your data and prompt engineering to some extent. And when I'm saying prompt engineering, I'm not talking about what some people are saying prompt engineering, which is more prompt parsing. It's like changing some of the words in English so that would be more relevant. That's not the idea. The idea is hardcore engineering, dev work, AI orchestration that is happening within this. There's full renovation, which means you are fine-tuning the model itself, the foundational model, and then there's custom build, which is training your own foundational models. Everything is supported in Azure AI, so it's really around you to decide what you want to do. If you want to train, obviously this Azure is the best place for you to do this. You can see that in MLPref training, V3 and inferencing V3, there's some really the big changes between competitor cloud offerings in terms of the time to do this. Also, if we're looking at the supercomputer list on Eagle, the supercomputer from Microsoft is on the top 3. It's the only public cloud out there that is part of it. So obviously it's a great place for you to train your own models. But, and this is something that is extremely important, I would actually urge you not to do that, because in my experience, 90% of startup use cases actually made sense with just adding your data and doing hardcore prompt engineering. And as I mentioned, developers, so orchestration and not just prompt parsing. If you are an AI startup, then it makes a lot of sense to you to go all the way down to fine-tuning and training. So obviously, you probably need to do this because this is part of your core. But if you are not an AI startup, that's not the right place to start, because 90% of the startup use cases can be solved. And we are looking at the expansion, the evaluation of the models. So from GPT 3.5 to 4 to 4 to Turbo. So all of those together, I would say, are evolving in a pace that makes sense. If you're just adding data and prompt engineering, you should be fine. And this is why ready-made and full renovation is probably a good way to at least start with if you're not an AI startup. So the latest Azure AI OpenAI models are already here: GPT-4 Turbo, DALL-E 3, and GPT-4 Turbo with Vision. I do want to talk a little bit about the roadmap here, and that is around multimodality. So I would say this is the roadmap of a lot of the things that we're seeing across Azure OpenAI, which is a multi-model Gen AI, GPT-4 or any of the version Turbo and what comes next in Azure AI. The idea is to unlock new scenarios, which means it's not just around building it with, for example, text. It's including Azure AI Vision and some of those integration, and it's ingesting or understanding relationships between data, your data, vector data, combining search into that. So if you're trying to think about the future, it's probably not thinking about those models as separate models, but it's one model that can do a lot of different things, whether it's on voice, whether it's on video, on text, on images. And while we are offering some of it today, like GPT-4 Turbo with Vision, you can see that some of the places that we're investing right now, definitely the places that are coming in the future, are very much invested in those areas. But apart from OpenAI, there's a big investment around the open source and the open source community as well. I just wanted to make sure that you understand that we're not just doing OpenAI. we're allowing you to get a lot of the different models this way and also evaluate them. So we also offer Llama as a service today, similar to Azure OpenAI. There's a Llama service as a service that you can take directly from Azure AI. There's some of the NVIDIA models, Hugging Face models. There's also startups in the Microsoft for Startups ecosystem that already published some of their models into the model catalog. Deci and DeciLM, I would really encourage you to explore it. It's really an interesting model and has amazing results today, and also costs way cheaper than previous models or similar models. So thinking about a model catalog and that separation of layers is really important to understand that GPT-4 Turbo is probably the best, and I would say personally, I think that's the best model in most of the use cases, but maybe not the most appropriate one, because you don't need a Tesla if you just want to walk a few steps. So sometimes you may want to evaluate different things for different scenarios, and I don't think in the long sense there would be just one model that you would do everything with it. You probably need to start thinking in a more evolved way of what is the right model for a specific task. This is the model catalog. So you can see here, like in the preview, there's a lot of different models from Hugging Face, from Azure OpenAI, from some of the open source models. It's all part of the Azure AI Studio, and you can just choose it here, see some of the examples, and then also do some of the testing. One of the things that we just announced, and again, will be coming and will be evolving as we see the roadmap unfolds, is the model benchmarking. So that is used, offers to you, to do some comparison, to provide a view for benchmarking some key metrics between those different foundational models. So you can self-educate yourself and try to make informed decisions instead of you deciding I'm doing this because I read online that this is a really good model, or it's someone I read online that this has good accuracy. I would say that doing that evaluation yourself based on your data in your specific Azure AI Studio is a great place for you to explore this. And you can see some of those examples here. So when you're trying to build it with multi-model, this is sort of the things that you need to take into account. One is selecting your chat model. And again, there's some options here, whether it's GPT, Llama, model catalog, or fine-tuning yourself. Adding some of the data, and we'll see in a second an example on how to do this. That could be through Azure AI Search, or importing some of your data, doing things that are more advanced like Fabric or the Microsoft Graph, or using some external database, and then start calibrating some of the prompt logic and doing some of the monitor usage as well. So this is a place, and as I mentioned, Azure AI Studio, you've seen it in my previous demo, is very much built across those best practices. So if you go with the flow of how we build this product, then you probably will be building your AI Copilot in a very easy and sensible manner. There's also things that we're currently exploring that I wanted to highlight. Again, we're trying to share with you as much of the roadmap as we can, which is the speech is now available on the playground itself. So you can try out Azure AI Speech with Azure AI OpenAI service. That means you can have real-time transcription and multimodality responses. So instead of just doing text, you can also use speech as well and do some language detection. And something that I found extremely cool that we just announced, and if you want, it's also something you can test right now on the preview. It's to create natural sounding synthetic voices trained on human voices recording that you provide, which means you can adapt to languages or speaking styles that would really be accurate to what you're trying to convey. And again, it's all part of what I shared with you earlier on the multimodality roadmap that we're currently seeing unfold both on OpenAI and on Microsoft, and definitely a place for you to continue investing. So even if you're currently thinking about Copilot as text-based Copilot, that's definitely not the case anymore, and that's just going to change as we see the future. So once we talked a little bit about the foundational models, let's talk about the data layer. As I mentioned, it's an extremely important layer because otherwise you don't have the right context or grounding to what you're trying to do. I'm not going to talk too much about this because Amit will show you a really cool demo of this. But obviously, if you have your own Copilot, you have to get your data. We can, in Azure AI Studio, help you get all of your data, whether it's from your own data sources like blob files or additional third-party data sources. You can see some of those here, like it could be blob storage, Elasticsearch, or AI search. Local files and folders, and many of those areas that could integrate both structured and unstructured data into that context. And what that does, it allows you to do retrieval-augmented generation, what we call RAG, which means when the user has asked a question, then that also queries your own data from that search indexing, add those results into the prompt, and only then send it to the foundational models, which means that the foundational models also being ingested with a lot of the context from your own specific data based on some of the capabilities that you introduced on your own specific data formats, whether it's semantic search or Azure AI search. That is, make sure that the results that you're getting are well grounded into your search index. A good way to test it is to make sure that the results that you're sending out will never be the same results that you're getting if you're just going directly to the foundational models without the context, because you do need to make sure that your IP and your data and all of your collective learnings are also being infused into this application and the model itself. So I know at this point, a lot of the startups are saying, yeah, but this is where it kind of gets a bit murky because I don't want some of my data to go together with training. So let me give you some really three specifics. And again, that goes to Azure OpenAI and to Microsoft and the Azure AI Studio, specifically everything coming from Microsoft directly. So connecting with Microsoft. One, your data is your data. So anything that you do here across confusing or kind of mixing some of that data with the foundational models, your data will still be your data. It's not going to be used to train or enrich any of the foundational AI models. And this is part of the commitment. And it is protected by every step. And is, by the way, protected by all of the compliances that are part of the Azure AI compliance on the larger stance. So I know that there's a lot of debate and discussion around this on the enterprise AI guarantees, but Microsoft and specifically Azure is putting compliance, privacy, and security as part of front and center of what we do. And that remains the same on the Azure AI and Azure OpenAI front as well. So I understand this is a big concern, and maybe that concern is valid in some of the external, specifically the consumer-based applications, even from OpenAI or some of the other areas. You may want to understand and learn a little bit about that to evaluate what is relevant. But specifically for Azure OpenAI and for Azure AI as a whole, those are the commitments we have. If you want to learn more about this, you can go into Compliance Center by on the Azure AI and just read about it, and specifically some of the certifications that we currently have, whether it's for health or for financial services or for government and things like GDPR. Really recommend you to educate yourself, but there is a big difference between working with Microsoft and working on a consumer-based product here. Good. So we covered the basis. We covered some of the foundational models. Hopefully you got to understand there's a way to evaluate between what is right for you on every specific scenario, and also understand that there's reasons to fine tune, but probably not for 90% of your use cases, and also a little bit about interacting with your own specific data. Now, where the real magic happens is on the AI orchestration layer. And this is where we'll put, and I'll invest some of the remaining time of my session, is to talk about what that does. So how do we really build an Azure AI prompt that is coming from the user, from the Copilot, before ingesting it specifically into the foundational model? Let's take an example just to get to understand how much work is needed to really build this together. So think about the fact I'm a retail application, I'm a retail startup, I'm offering some ways for you to buy, for example, sleeping bags. And now, just before acquiring or purchasing, or even shortly after, A user is asking the Copilot, will my sleeping bag work for my trip to Patagonia next month? So this is something, again, think about adoption. This is something that the user wants to do. It could have done it through the hard way of going through the specs and then trying to test it and see what everything would be in terms of weather. But we're trying to build on adoption and lowering the complexity for the users. So we need to do all of that hard work within the foundational model, which is natural language and reasoning. But what we have here is not enough. It's not enough to answer this question because we need some additional data. And this is where most of the prompt engineering happens. And again, don't think about prompt parsing, because it's not about changing the prompt or the English. It's about ingesting additional data. So for example, I need historical weather lookup. I need to understand what will be the weather in Patagonia next month. I need the personalization. So what did you buy? Or what are you intending to buy? I need a recommendation engine for what is the sleeping bag and what is the preferences of it, some of the intent mapping, context, and additional things. Only when I have all of those things together, and a lot of them require some really base engineering and dev work to call a lot of different APIs within my IP and external data sources, only then I can invoke the LLM and answer, yes, your specific one will be fittable because it's below the average low temperature. So there's a lot of work that has to happen here before putting it into LLM for this to work. And this is where orchestration really shines. We're calling this, in many of the cases, a place for you to start introducing LLM ops, which is bringing LLM ops into production. There's some things here to think about in terms of people and processes and platform to try and automate those LLM infused software and make sure that you can continuously improve on what you're doing on that orchestration layer. So Azure AI Studio actually does all of this. And as I mentioned, we've put everything in one place. So it will be very easy for you to understand. There is the unified platform. And you see some of the example on the multimodality tools and the dev experience. There's the data integration, and we just talked about this, but there's also hybrid and semantic search. There's the full development lifecycle, including understanding and evaluating between the models, and there's the safety and responsible AI dashboard. So everything that is needed for LLM ops and this orchestration layer is actually put in right place right now. Let's see some of the examples. So this is Promptful, for example. We'll maybe talk more about this on the next session as well. But what we can see here is that we take the input and then we move it to a bunch of boxes. Every box is actually code. So you can run code that says, okay, now retrieve the cart, go to this API and retrieve all of that data, because this is what is needed to infuse or to add more context before I'm setting it to the IP or to the LLM. And you can see there's a lot of places here that you can really start exploring or expanding some of the work that is happening across the prompt engineering before sharing it to the output. And thinking about this layer, what is needed to happen, when it's needed to happen, what is the sum of the additional context or data points that I need to provide, is exactly what you need to make sure that this answers in the best behalf of your IP and what you can actually provide. Now, again, this is real prompt engineering, because if you're not writing code at this point, then you're probably not doing something right. There's a lot of things that need to happen here to make sure that this is really accurate and providing or accurate and not hallucinated responses. Another cool or key thing here is to think about responsible AI. And I would say that this is something that we've seen more and more across the board. The difference between this and maybe previous things that you've seen is that you're putting this in the hands of the user. So you want to make sure that the users are not doing things that are, potentially offensive or harassing them to some extent. And I'm saying this because I know a lot of startups are saying, yeah, security, responsibility, this is like for future later stages. But because this is being put on the users, and this is actually answering in your behalf, you need to make sure that this goes on the right way. So it's combined by a meta prompt that also brings some grounding, some toning, some safety, and avoiding some of the jailbreaks that could happen. And you can see even things like content safety that allows you to make sure that you're answering this in the most responsible way. And it's all, again, infused in the same application. Let's see a quick example of this on the Content Safety Studio. So we'll continue with the same application we've seen before. We want to try and maybe choose a product that is best fit for something. So I'm looking for an axe to cut a path in the forest. That's definitely something that we can answer, similar to what we did with the sleeping bag. But before we even go to that, we want to make sure that it does not harm violence, self-harm, sexual, or hate, because otherwise we don't want to make sure that that goes all the way. Now, if you go back to that same prompt, just change one word. Instead of cut a path, we just cut a person. That is definitely an answer that you don't want people to answer, even if you can answer this. So you can see that that content safety actually caught it very early on, and even before going all the way, it stopped it. Now you can change it, and you can say, okay, I am trying to do something that is more in terms of news or media, so I want to be more lenient here, or maybe more areas here. So it's really depending on what you're trying to do, but there's a lot of evaluation that needs to happen, and some of it needs to happen even before you're going into the things like prompt flow and building it all the way through to the application. The last thing I want to talk here is thinking about LLM flows. And again, there's things here that we still haven't covered because this topic is huge. Optimizing your costs with auto scaling, with the monitoring, with trying to understand development, enhancing your operations, trying to make sure that everything is not just built once, but continuously being improved. And this is a key part of building your own copilot, because if you're not continuously improving what you do, then you're not doing the right thing. So you can see here a good example of, for example, doing monitoring. I am trying to evaluate what is the longest places or the longest API calls that are currently taking time out of the Copilot response. And if you ever used ChatGPT or some of the LLMs, you know that waiting time is already could be some frustration for some users. So you want to make sure that this is being lowered as much as you can. So monitoring the fact that if you're now calling additional APIs and that API call is adding additional 3 seconds, this is not something you want to do. And there's some performance tuning and tweaking needs to happen specifically in those areas. So comparing model outputs for your business requirements is also very important. You want to evaluate this from a capability perspective, from cost, from latency, from compatibility, and there's various ways to do this. The best way, and again, is the thinking LLM ops. It's similar to DevOps. This is a orchestration that needs to take it all the way from building it to testing to evaluate it. And you need to do this in a continuous way, and to do that continuous model monitoring. Let's see a quick example of this, just to make sure that you understand. This is also part of the Azure AI Studio. You can create a new evaluation. You can define what is a runtime, and for currently doing this on specific flow, and defining what is the metrics that you're trying to evaluate, which is, for example, similarity and F1 scores and additional ones. You can go all the way to groundness and relevance, which are always recommended. And then you can start doing those evaluations and doing them continuously, and getting those results. You can do this across different models, also across different versions of your orchestration operational models, to make sure that you can evaluate what you're trying to do and also address some of those areas to make sure that the scores are getting higher every time. So the idea is, once you build a Copilot, is that after a month, 2 months, 3 months of you running this Copilot, it should run substantially better. It should answer much more of what it could on the first day. It should do this much faster than what it did on initial. So there is a reason to go online when you're already thinking about LLM ops in that sense, because in this way, there's a great way for you to continuously improve. And again, I'll take you to my second slide of this session. This is your competitive advantage. So if you're doing this early on, you're collecting enough data that you can be better of any other copilot on the market. And if you're having like a year's experience when someone is just infused, you can make sure that not just users, but also additional copilots that may invoke you from that copilot ecosystem would prefer working with you because you're the best option. So this is not just a model, it's an application. It requires a thinking of an application. And there's a lot of things here to take into account when building those evaluations. So I want to pause here and maybe collect some questions. I know there's been a handful. We try to cover both why that matters, why AI pivots and future-proofing your startups is a crucial point in time, and why it doesn't have anything to do with AI. So it's across every industry, every domain, every IP, every startup, and then talking a little bit about the process of really taking this through the Azure AI Studio and all of the best practices that are infused there, from choosing your data, choosing the right model, adding your data, doing that orchestration model, and doing LLM ops. I want you to take three things out of this session. One is there is a new development pattern here. So this is more for developers than data scientists. There's a new dev pattern here you need to be familiarized with, especially if you're still thinking on the traditional model, building a UX that is specifically designed to take all of the options or capabilities of the complex IPs that you have. This may not be the right path for every new IP that you have. And in some complicated scenarios, you may want to offer a different parallel dev pattern. This is a unique AI-based architecture. So you've seen the architecture. It's quite different than the UX because there's some ways here, some things that you may need to infuse, invoke, and do some content and data retrieval yourself to make sure that this is accurate. So instead of putting a lot of the cognitive load on the user to be super accurate in telling you what it wants to do, you need to do some of that work yourself. The good news is that LLMs are quite good in understanding what you're trying to do because they have a very strong natural language reasoning engine, but there is some work to do there, and it's a lot of engineering work that needs to be infused in the orchestration layer. And then the third piece is actually something that is forward-thinking and forward-looking. This is a platform, not just in the way that it's being built through your application, but from the reach perspective as well. And every investment that you're doing here is investment that you can easily publish into that platform itself, whether it's ChatGPT and the stores that are coming, whether there's plugins and some of those investments. So there is a reason to start investing in this internally today, because you may be able to reach new users if you have a very sophisticated, grounded, and accurate copilot that is running on a specific domain. That may be preferred by a lot of users that are trying to get there and don't even know who you are, never downloaded your application, but you already have something that is very sophisticated and you driven it through monitoring and LLM ops for some cycles that is now being preferred by agents as well, not just by users. And you may see this as a new platform, a new reach for your applications or for your users. Everything, as I mentioned, is part of the Azure AI Studio. So whether it's pre-built capabilities, whether it's from the AI orchestration, you've seen examples of prompt flow, of the models, of semantic kernel, of experiments, and the model customization and tuning. So if I'm talking about the AI roadmap and summarizing what we tried to kind of convey here, if we're looking at current apps today, they're very constrained on the interaction because you need to predefine everything with the UX. Everything is hard-coded and fixed, and changes are very costly and complicated. When you're moving to a natural language interaction, everything is becoming more data-driven and personalized because everybody can convey everything they want to do. If they can think and they can say it, they can probably implement it very quickly. And it's very easy to move because you've seen it even on my very first demo. You just need to describe it in English, and that's it. That's everything you need to do to move between one to the other. So it's pretty much easy to do this very agile and to make your current app an intelligent app. There is a lot of investment that is coming to do this, but it's very prominent to make sure that you're moving and kind of taking what your existing investments towards the next world. I'm going to finish off with one kind of quote that I love, and I think would really make sense of why that matters and that bring that sense of urgency. So I think the complexity and urgency factor has transcended what humans can cope with. And I think all of us can really agree with it. There's too much happening, specifically in applications and computers and in websites. And if we're looking at what Douglas Engelbart said, he was suddenly flushed with the idea if we can do something not to add more features, but actually to improve human capability to cope with the existing ones, you'd be really contributing to something basic. And this is a sentiment I hope you're going from this session and kind of thinking and trying to embrace it more and more. I know that there's a lot of roadmaps. I've been sitting with a lot of startups in the program, and they're saying, but I'm really, really focused on doing this and this and this. But I think this is a time when there's a new platform that is being emerged to think about whether those roadmaps still valid. And think about the fact that Microsoft changed a lot of our roadmaps to go towards the Copilot. And believe us, we had a lot of plans for those things. And we've introduced a lot of Copilots very quickly and early on because we understood there's something fundamental is happening here that can really change adoption. This is what we're trying to do at this point, is to improve stickiness, improve reach. If this is what you're trying to do, that may be time after this session to go to your startup, to VP R&D, to your CTO, have a seat with them and say, are we doing the right thing? Or should we try and cope or incorporate some of this into our existing plans, even though we're not an AI startup and we haven't had those scenarios, or we didn't go all the way or full into them up until now. So be very honest with one, your path. What are you in exploration, piloting, scaling, or innovating? And then the second, are you doing enough to make sure that you're front and center when this application emerges? Because what we know about a platform for sure is that when a platform emerges, a lot of new startups are becoming like the new companies, and you can think about from Meta and Airbnb and Spotify and Netflix and Uber, everything that came from mobile. And then you can think about a lot of them that are not. And there is a time in the market for startups to specifically when a new platform is being emerged, to make sure that you're owning a new industry just by making sure you're harnessing the best of that platform. That is that point in time. And that the tools are there for you to start exploring this. So hopefully, yeah, there's a place for you to do this. I'll pause here. I'll take some time for questions. The next session, what we'll do is actually do a deep dive demo across everything that you just seen. So we talked a lot about separate things and hopefully got you to look at the big picture, but we also want to take you specifically to the grounding of the thing. So Amit will take you through a story of how things can be built. If you are trying to do this and you want to make sure that you leverage the best of what we offer in Founders Hub, up to 150K of free credits, including Azure OpenAI. From the exploration side, there's 2,500 free OpenAI credits. Me and my team, including Amit and the external team, we are here for one-on-one guidance, and both on business and technical challenges. As you've seen, it's kind of mixed at this point because a lot of the business side and the adoption and the reach are actually now being super infused in the platform and the AI. And there's also free access to the dev productivity. So we talked a little bit about GitHub, but there's also things for you to maybe learn from infusing 365 or Dynamics or other places where copilots already live, and think about how our copilots can really share or give you some ideas of how to build your own copilot. So I'll pause here. We'll do a quick time for some questions. I'll have Paul kind of mitigate the best top ones of them. That's also time to maybe take a quick break if you want, because I know there's been a lot, and then we can move to Amit's part.
Yeah, thanks, Adir. So we've answered a few as we've gone, the non-technical ones, that is. Good one here. When will AI Studio, the full version, be released? I know it's in public preview at the moment.
Yeah, it's a good question. We currently don't have any date to disclose, but not soon. Okay, let's.
Okay, that's cool. You haven't tied yourself down there, which is good. On average, how quickly are your partners spinning up the ready-made copilot with their data and prompt stroke dev? Any sort of insight there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you took some of what we talked about LLM ops, I would really, and I'm pioneering a lot of the startups that we're working with and the partners, to actually go to market as quickly as we can. So make sure that you're putting in the front and center, obviously taking things like responsible AI and cost and data grounding into sense. But I think that doing this and then start the monitoring and building and seeing all of the data that is being collected to improve is much better than doing this on like a side place, because we don't have a lot of experience across many domains. This is quite new at this point. So you can collect that data that is specifically relevant to your IP and to your startup. So, and I would opt in to get something that is, how we call it in Microsoft lingo for Copilots, preview. Okay. Bear in mind, you always have the traditional UX. There's nothing you're taking away from the user. You're just offering a new way for people that are very adjusted and used to working with ChatGPT. You're giving them a new way to work, and then you're learning about what they're managing to do, what works well, what doesn't work well, where GPT or where your Copilot is failing, where it's extremely successful, and where performance and cost and things like that. So I would really strongly argue that you can do this in a matter of weeks, have something that is preview and ready-made and grounded enough for users to start using, and then start collecting the data and improving it. And again, as I mentioned, if you have the same Copilot in day 1 as you do it in day 100, then you're not doing something right. You're not doing LLM ops. You're not improving as you go. That's not so. Get something on the ground, start tracking it, start learning from it, leverage everything you have in Azure AI Studio to understand what you can do with it, and then continuously improve it while it's on the go. And then once you feel comfortable enough, just drop the preview logo. That's what we did.
Good stuff. So another one, again, if you have a deployed Copilot stroke LLM Q&A model, is it possible to update the basic prompt, which is used to query search results once a chat app has been deployed, or does it need to be redeployed?
No, but you can do this. By the way, you can also run them in parallel. You've seen this on prompt flow. So there's some ways for you to do this in parallel as well. And we can also share, maybe there's if you want, there's a really good by Seth Juarez, a really good session on build that he's actually showing how to do this. So look it up.
Cool. That actually answers a couple of questions in terms of, is a step-by-step training available? Just there's a couple of those. So the answer to that question is yes, and Adir can post in the Q&A just to save a bit of time when Amit is talking. Another one then, with the chat app, can you retrieve the text snippets that it uses in construction and give an answer in order to satisfy compliance requirements? To be specific, we would like the text snippets, not just the URLs.
So I'm not sure I understood the question, but let me just
have a look while Amit is doing his thing, and maybe you can fashion something.
Don't want to take the time. I will continue answering things on online as well. I just want to make sure that Amit has the time to also do this. So first of all, I want to thank you. It was I see there's quite a bit of people that stayed, so that's good. And hopefully it was interesting. I will be here continuing to answer on the chat. So if you wanna, you can continue answer that, and I will pass the mic along to Amit. So Amit.
Thanks, Adir. Thanks, Paul. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to take what Adir told about and showed us, and show you first how we in Microsoft incorporated into our product what we called 1 + 1 = 3. And we're going to make a copilot that is equal to the product that I'm showing you right now, a step-by-step guide. So you see how easy it is. And for some of your question, most of our AI products are in preview, but are fully functional. It's in preview because, and it will, I think I really don't know the answer for that, how long it will be preview mode, but it doesn't mean that they are not functioning, that they are not working, and we're not using them in our products. So let me share my screen, and I will show you some of the usages we are currently doing with Copilot. For example, I can see the sessions that we did right now. and I can ask Copilot to summarize what just happened in the last hour and a half. Okay, let's imagine that I just arrived to this conversation and I didn't really have the time to follow up. Also, okay, so we see that Paul introduced the program in the UK. We can see the number here because we talked about a lot about hallucination, and we show how Microsoft infrastructure help us ground the answers and show us where the data was taken from, and in which step and which Copilot program that we are going to see today. And again, build one by ourselves, step by step. We will see how we show the user when and how we use the data to get these insights from. So a really great stuff that need to be happening in meetings is what question were unresolved, for example. Sorry, as always, we have to have some bugs. Let's ask him a different question. Suggest follow-up questions. What will be a good follow-up question for a deal? So instead of me listening for a deal and asking some smart question, I will just let Copilot run by Azure OpenAI suggest a question for me. And after that, I'm going to show you many more applications that are more exciting than this. But this is just one option when you have the regular Zoom, Teams meeting, when you can just boost your product. Although Teams is not an AI product, it's currently an AI product, okay? And it can boost what I did. And those are really valid questions. What is the main difference between Azure AI Studio and other tools like Azure Machine Learning or Azure Cognitive Services? This is a really smart question. You really understand Microsoft products. I will answer this question. So Azure Machine Learning and Cognitive Services. Azure Machine Learning is for what used to be data science. And currently the world is ruled again by engineers, by VP R&Ds and CTOs. We might still need them, but even someone just started developing can use APIs, and those APIs are under Azure Cognitive Services. All of this Azure Machine Learning and Azure Cognitive Services that can help you create with only UI, and we are going to see today, and of course get the code out of it, it's actually the app that contains all of the necessary services. So it was a really smart question. And so let's go on and see how browsing has changed, for example. So I can go to the BBC website, and we know that ChatGPT has knowledge up until 6 months ago, and they updated it recently, but it's not update for what's happened today. So we need to use RAG, as Adir said, retrieval augmentation of data. So let's go to something that happened today. So we have the transfer update and football update, and I don't have the time to read all of those updates because I'm in the middle of a meeting. So I can use Microsoft Edge, and I can open my Copilot over here and just ask him to generate page summary. I can ask him any question in any natural language that I want, and he's going to actually read this page while I'm speaking, and it's going to summarize the page for me. Okay, and I can even ask him a question about follow-up questions that are not in this website, and he will go and search the internet for me. And we will see today how we can build it. So it's not only our products that I'm showing you, it's just to show you how the Copilot and everything that Adir was talking about, we took a very regular product like a web browser that everybody knows and just infuse it with AI. So it's also suggesting me, this is a really great UX, by the way, some follow-up question. Who is leading AFCON 2023? Or a lot of those following questions, I can ask, again, any questions that I want, are not in this website. So what he's going to do is going to go to different website. And again, this is the RAGs that we talked about. It showed us the web page that he used. Okay, Sky Sport. I don't think that BBC will like it, but he used Sky Sport and CBS Sport to get the information, and also created the table. So in the past, you used to search the web and get a lot of those links. Let's ask the same question in the old experience of browsing the internet. Okay, so I'm getting a lot. I'm not using internet like this anymore. I don't want to click on the links. I need the Adil told us about the AI assistant revolution. So I have an AI assistant. He actually looked on all this website for me and give it to me in a form of a table. So the AI future is here, and every product that you currently have has to have an AI in it. Not because everyone else is going to do it. Okay, so you don't want to stay behind. And again, I'm going to show you some few more examples, but we are actually going to build something like this and much more sophisticated in under 20 minutes. So let's continue. And let's say that I want to invite my friends to a party. So I can go, I have to be on my personal account and not on my work account. And I'll explain to you in a second, because on my work account, I can get all the information from Microsoft. And so we have split it into two different accounts. You can see my entire screen. Dear Paul, did I share the entire screen or not? Let's see. Let me reshare my screen.
Yeah, it's all, I'm one of them. Yeah, we can see.
Okay, great. But I need to share the audio as well. So I'm stop sharing my screen for a second, and I do want to use audio as well. So let's go back to my personal browser, and let's go back to BBC. Okay, let's choose, let's go back to sport. And I can even ask him to create an invitation for me. So create an image of AFCON 2023 in space, played by cats. Okay, so I've read an article, and the article was very nice, and I said, okay, it's really this is something that I would like to invite my friend to watch at my house, but how can you create the A to Z experience? So another tool, we saw Azure OpenAI, now we're looking at Azure DALL-E. DALL-E is our creation app. So this is really, really exciting image. And I'm going to click on the customize, and I'm now going to another Microsoft tools, the Microsoft Designer. So I've started from browsing. I read some articles that I liked. I learned some new stuff. Now I want to invite my friends. So I created an image, and I don't really like so many footballs. So I'm going to use the generative erase function. It's like a Photoshop, and it will create an invite to anyone that I would like to invite to my house. So I'm going to delete this football, this football, this football, and this football, or should I say soccer. And in a few seconds, I have created an invitation for my friends, and let me just add some cool effects and text. And this is an A to Z experience. This is what customers are expecting, and this is what actually it's everything that I show you for now is free, by the way. You can test it right away. So you can help me create some interesting text over here. I can tell him exactly what I wanted, but and I can add more pages. But let's move over from the browsing experience. And we also have the Microsoft Copilot Studio. It's something that we announced 2 days ago. Again, everything is available for you to try and test it. Microsoft Copilot, this is a different product that I will speak to you about at the end of the conversation. This is Microsoft Copilot. It's not Copilot Studio. Everything in Microsoft in generative AI is called Copilot. This is how we framing what we want to do. But I can ask him to write a song about Meet Bausenberg, CTO at Microsoft for startups, speaking to UK top list startups. So you see, I need to sign in if I want it to work. So it's not going to work the way I wanted it. So let me just sign in for a second. Okay, again, the same prompt. Okay, so I don't know how to write music. I don't know how to write songs. And I'm in the middle of a presentation. So in order for this to happen, I'm using the plugins. Adil talked about an entire Copilot ecosystem. So we actually used another plugin by another company called Suno that was integrated into our Copilot. And this is something that you can do. Instacart, Kayak are big enterprises that already created plugins, Copilot plugins into Copilot. Now everything that Adil was talking about might connect, because you don't have to build the Copilot in order to build a Copilot that people can use and people can pay license for. Let's hear the music. I'm Miss Weisenberg, CEO of Microsoft startups. Speaking to you, get super startups. Let's start up. Got the vision, making moves, we on the rise. Gonna build our dreams, reach for the skies. Yeah, we're here to innovate, disrupt the scene. No time for sleep, we working like machines. Let's go. Entrepreneurs in the making, we never stop. Listen to Amen, they'll take us to the top. Come on, you heard that? You need to listen to me. I will take you to the top. Okay. So I wrote a song and also created music and also presented to you. So this is some of the examples. I can, if we have more time, I can show you how I can create a presentation in seconds and how I can, our office tools and office suites. And basically, there is so many tools that Microsoft, after investing $11 billion in OpenAI, is used in order to change the entire company. And if we, as a huge enterprise, had to change, had to evolve, everybody has to do it. So before I will continue and show you how to actually build it yourself, let's talk about some basics, what have changed, why AI has conquered the market. So what really happened is basically the foundation model. If you heard about this buzzword and you don't know what a foundation model, so can you, Paul, can you see my screen? Because I have two screens over here, and I don't know if
we can see the main. I can see the main title slide. What are the foundation models? But we can see your presentation view at the moment.
Okay, great. So what are foundation models? So what is this buzzword and why it changed the world? So in the past, we used to write algorithms to everything that we needed for. If we needed classification, detection, tracking, action models, entity recognition, topic classification, even sentiment analysis, well, we built a very small algorithms. We consider them small today. So foundation model is actually a one model trained with huge amount of data and can be applicable for different applications. As you can see on this slide, the data can be text, image, audio, structured data, 3D signals, sensor, and everything. But the output will be question answering, semantic analysis, information extraction, image captioning, object recognition, instruction following, and more. So what's special about them?
Amit, can I just say that you're in presentation mode at the moment? Do you want to just change your settings so we can see both the next slide and the notes, if that makes sense?
Okay. Display.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Super.
Thanks. So why are foundation models so special? Foundation models are so special because they are expensive. They need a lot of data. And lucky for you, don't need to train them. For example, GPT-3, the old model, cost $12 million to train. Llama 1, there is currently Llama 2, out there, cost $5 million. And those foundation models are actually being deployed as an API at the end. So as a startup, you probably don't have $12 million to build your own foundation model, but you have a fraction of a cent to use them. So this is actually really great for you. But this is a revolution, those foundation models. We can see that GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters, and GPT-4 was 100 trillion parameters. The research suggested we have another 8 years before we're going to, GPT are going to be in a human brain size. So we have another 8 good years to run. So no need to panic. I'm not going to talk more about the tech behind it because I want to start showing you some examples and how to build it yourself. So let's go right back into to Azure. And let's do a step-by-step. This is actually recorded. So I believe that you will be able to get the recorded afterward. So I'm going to do it step-by-step, show you how I can create a competition to this copilot that you just see. Okay, so you can integrate it into your current product with your own data, with everything that you just saw, the RAG, even image and audio capabilities. And so let's see that I'm not over-promising and under-deliver, and let me start. So this is Azure. You don't need to panic. Everything that you need to do is deploy Azure OpenAI. Super simple. You go to create. By the way, in the Founders Hub, you get up to $150,000 to use OpenAI services, so it can be actually free for you. This is the subscription. In Microsoft, in Azure, you have to also have resource group under it. You can give it almost any names that you want. We have been deployed all around the world. So you just need to choose the best place where your customers are. For example, for today, I would deploy in UK South, but if my customers are in Japan, I would deploy my resource at Japan, and so on. Name, currently there is only one pricing tier. And next. Because I already have Azure OpenAI deployed, I'm not going to create another one, but what's the gap between me to create it, you just click next, and put some names in those fields. Super simple. So after I have Azure OpenAI resource, I can go into the Azure AI Studio, and I need to create a new project. Creating a new project, give it a name, and create project. Again, I'm not going to create a project because it takes some time, and I don't want to waste your time. I'm going to use the project that I already built, but I'm going to do it from scratch. So let's start from the home screen. Here you can create the project, and then we talked about a lot about multimodality and our multimodality is super important. So multimodality means that I can upload an image to OpenAI. And for example, let's take the picture, no, not the pizza one. Let's take the refrigerator one. And ask the question, what healthy food can I make? I will show you how I'm going to build the same Copilot in a second, but this is Microsoft Copilot on the browser. And this is the multimodality part. When I am uploading an image, an audio, or every other sensoric out there, and I'm using the foundation models. In this example, we're going to use GPT-4 Vision. It's another foundation model. We have the Florence foundation model. We're also going to see today how we're going to customize them. So sometimes we'll have to create a customized image model, and we understand why foundation model fine-tuning is also super great because we don't need a lot of data or a lot of money to fine-tune them. But we got the ingredients, we got the instructions, and now we can also create dishes from whatever we have in our fridge, and we can also go into those links. The RAG is super important to make sure that it doesn't hallucinate, and we are going to bring our Copilot back to its place. We are also going to talk today about the UI and UX and how you can build a Copilot. For example, this is a great example of Copilot being on the beside of the program. We'll see an example of inside, and also in the end, how we can create a much even bigger one in an outside development. But let's go over. So look at the home page, explore. So we have the model catalog. We don't have to use OpenAI all the time. Actually, OpenAI can be quite expensive. There are lighter algorithms. Even Microsoft Research has currently deployed Pi2, which is a very lightweight algorithm. We have everything from Meta, everything on Agriface, NVIDIA. We have startups. If you know Mistral, a French startup, or Desi, it's a local startup over here. Even your startup can be on this model catalog, and everybody can use it. So I'll show you later how we can pick and choose the right model for you, and how we can sometimes use Azure OpenAI, and how we can sometimes use Fit2 when we want to have it lighter and bring answer faster. And of course, cost is also important, and with much cheaper call. Although calling to Azure OpenAI is very low. I'll show you the price in a second. Then you can also look at the benchmark, because you don't know, because I know that that fee is lighter than Azure OpenAI and Falcon. You might don't know that. So you can also compare models and see for yourself which one fits whatever you want to do. Capabilities, we're going to go over speech, vision, and language when we are going to build our solution under the build tab in a second. So if you're going to sell to corporates or enterprises, content safety is super important. We're going to understand how we can use it. And what's more important about using Azure, the handler is going to be from Microsoft. So CISOs that will ask you, CISOs that sees other startups as an handler for generative AI might be blocked by CISO and security by big companies. But if you're using Azure OpenAI, the handler is going to be from Microsoft. No, and we are also have the guarantee that we are not going to abuse or use the data. So every CISO in a very big enterprise will be easy to use while working with Azure. So this is another great advantage. And we can see also some prompts, and if we don't really know how to build stuff, how can build travel assistant or insurance or research, so you can also get some inspiration. So now let's start. This is the build phase, and we'll go to the playground. And let's say that I want to visit Japan. And I have 2 kids, and what I want currently today is build an AI assistant that can help me visit Japan and plan a trip for me. So before entering the system message and checking the application and even deploying it, where I can also deploy the application today. Okay, the users won't see this terrifying site. This is too much complex. This is for us, the developers, product managers, the people that actually want to test it, but we'll deploy it into a new web app. So let's go and deploy the algorithm. I already deployed GPT-4, and I called it GPT-4 Amit, because I have no imagination at all. And I use GPT-3.5 and called it GPT-3 Turbo Amit. But let's see how I can deploy. So it's super easy. I click on create, and then I need to choose between one of those thousands of algorithms. So everything around Azure OpenAI, there are the famous ones, GPT-4, GPT-3, and so on. And I can see what tasks they can do. If it's embedding that we'll see in a second, it's super important to have text embedding ADA under Azure OpenAI. And if it's chat completion, most of the application, we will use GPT-4 or GPT-3. So we can also use Mistral, Falcon, Whisper if we want to use speech recognition, and Desi, LLM 2 from Facebook. We can use the smaller one. We can deploy the bigger one. But again, the deployment is super easy. We click next, and we have never deploy. Let's just see one example of Turbo Instruct. Turbo Instruct. Let's confirm. Let's give it a name. Amit. I can give it any name that I want. I click on the deploy part, and in 2 seconds, I have a GPT-4.3 deployed with my key and endpoint ready. And there was a question, if I want to change the system message while ago, super easy, and I'm going to do it right now as we speak, so we see how easy it is. So once we have a deployment, we are going to go to the playground. We can also do it by code, and you can also get the code all the time. And you can also open it on a project in VS Code. So it can be integrated into your project in a matter of seconds. So this is the AI Studio. This is everything that Microsoft is doing, the cognitive services, the Azure ML, all under one roof, super simple. And all those buttons are going to create an amazing experience in a few seconds. So just a reminder, I have a trip to Japan with 2 kids, and I need an assistant for that. So we start with the Metapod, and this is the system message. And you are an AI assistant that helps people find information. This is not good enough. You are an AI assistant that helps people plan a trip to Japan. It's supposed to be enough. And I click Apply Changes. And now I just need to choose the deployment and ask him a week travel with 2 kids. I don't have to tell him that I'm going to Japan. I don't have to tell him anything else because he knows that he's an AI assistant that can know how to do one operation, and it's plan a trip to Japan. Let's see the answer. Week travel with 2 kids. So he told me I should start with Tokyo. Of course, this is the capital. Wow, there's a lot of days in Tokyo, like 4 days. I can chat with him and tell him 4 days in Tokyo is more than enough, and so on. But I want to speak to him. I want to chat with him. So I'm going to go to the Play Studio. But just before that, I'm going to show you that I can see the code. This is the code. Okay, this is the API keys that I have. This is the versions that I'm using, and this is the message text. You are an AI assistant that help people plan a trip to Japan. You can see it in Python, in C#, in JSON. I can copy the code anywhere. I can even open it in Visual Studio Code. Now, if you see on this code, there is nothing about speech or speech recognition. Let me show you how I can add speech recognition in 2 seconds. I'm going to the player settings. I am enabling speech to text. Currently, the microphone will work. I'm going to enable text to speech, and I'm going to choose Emma Voice. Can check Emma Voice beforehand, but I don't have to because I'm currently going to show you how it's going to work. I am going to a trip to Japan with 2 kids.
That's wonderful. Japan is a great destination with numerous attractions that your children will love. 1. Flights. Depending on where you're flying from, you can choose from several airlines that fly to Japan. Remember to check if they have any special amenities for children. 2. Accommodation. Japan offers a variety of accommodation options from traditional ryokans to modern hotels. Cities like Tokyo and Kyoto have family-friendly hotels with...
Okay, so let's see the code right now and see how it changes. Okay, so the code is it's add 2 more stuff: get text from microphone, and of course the chat completion that is used Emma Voice. So you just need to copy paste this code or deploy it via here in order to now have a chatbot that can speak and use microphone with your clients. And if it's not good enough, there is always add variables that you can add for so we can also perform more tasks and so on. But before we continue, we're going to talk about content filter, and the next phase is going to see more speech capabilities. And afterward, we're going to use vision capabilities, because today we're going to build a multimodality solution. So let's go and see if I'm going to ask him to plan a trip to Argentina. Would it work? The answer is yes. help me plan a trip to France. You shouldn't do it because the only thing that I wanted to do is for him to work on Japan. I closed the audio. You can open it right here, but I don't want it to stop. So let's fix it. Okay, so we have the meta prompt in the system message, and in order to change it, we have to add examples. For example, if I'm asking him, help me plan a trip to France, the answer should be no. I am only helping people plan a trip to Japan. So even if I have a spelling mistake, you will understand it, but I'll fix it. I currently did apply changes. Okay. And if I'm going to ask this question again, I will get a different answer. So now it says that he can't, but he was polite. I can tell him be more polite, less polite, but the examples are in English. Now I'll ask him about another country. Let me plan a trip to Germany. Should I tell him on each country that he can do it? No. I just told him that he can do it on France, and he understood. Okay, so examples are super important. Okay, and once we are going to use local data, it will also help us to limit the chatbot. And of course, we can also have content filters creation, where we can enable more speech. For example, if we're creating a video game, we do want to tell people that they can kill someone because it's a video game. So we can play with the content filter creation and create a content filter for what we want to do. There is also another studio that's called Content Safety Studio, where you can take everything that we just created and make sure that people aren't going to jailbreak our application. And it's going to try and see if our application can be jailbreak, like, for example, asking for a trip to France, although I build an application for Japan. And if our protected materials can be exposed, and so on and so. So when you are building an application, the entire suite is under Azure AI Studio. And everything that you want to build has to be used with different studios in order to create an entire solution. So, and we're going to use most of them today. So let's go back. So we show you how we can contain the application to only speak about Japan. And now we want to use more local data. So I'm going to add data source. And I'm going to upload the file. I need to create an Azure Blob Storage. It's the equal service for S3. And this is where we can put our files. In this example, I'm going to put a PDF file. We need to index, we need to embed our data. This is super important for OpenAI and other generative AI tools. We have to take the documents or images and embed them. So we are going to select Azure AI Studio, Azure AI Search Resource. This is, I'm going to show how you can create it because there is something that you need to know. When you're creating this resource, just you have on the pricing tier to be standard and up. Don't use the free or basic because embedding, and this is what you want to actually use, is not, it will not be available. The location doesn't have to be the same location where Azure OpenAI has been deployed. And the index name will be UK Top Startup Demo. Okay, and I'm going to add the vector search. And I need to deploy an embedded model. If you remember in the catalog, there was Azure OpenAI text embedded in the ADA. So I've deployed it. If you remember on the deployment, there was the meaning of all of the deployment. One was for completion, one was for embedding, one was for speech recognition. So you need to choose one for embedding. and I know it's going to cost money. This is I can always go and see the pricing, and we are going to talk about pricing in a second. Now I'm going to upload a file about Japan. I upload the file, and next. Okay, so I want to have an hybrid search. It's not only a vector keyword, and we will understand what it is in a second. And of course, I understand it's going to cost money. Okay, and save and close. So now, while he's ingesting our data, we're going to see what I actually asked for. So everything is done for us automatically, but it's always nice to understand. So if we want to understand what's happening, right now we need to understand what is semantic kernel.
Semantic Index for Copilot creates a sophisticated map of your personal and company data, identifying relationships and making important connections. In fact, your brain works like a semantic index by encoding multiple words and pictures to create a larger conceptual map of information. For example, a semantic map of what the average person knows about elephants would include things like elephants have trunks, and elephants travel in herds, and elephants live in Africa. Today, people are mostly familiar with keyword search, which relies on exact words and phrases. So when you search for March sales report, you get a list of documents that include exactly those 3 words. But a semantic index understands that sales reports are produced by Kelly on the finance team and published each month as an Excel file. And it encodes all of these concepts and relationships between concepts in vectors in the index. Semantic Index for Copilot analyzes your data. That's all your emails, documents, calendar, chats, and more in the Microsoft Graph, and uses a large language model, or LLM, to map all your content and the relationships between your content and you, searching through billions of vectors to find the most relevant results in milliseconds. It's what enables Microsoft 365 Copilot to deliver personalized, relevant, and actionable responses, and do so in a secure, compliant, privacy-preserving way. Semantic Index for Copilot enables every organization to be AI ready.
So this is what's actually happening behind the scenes when we're indexing data. So let's go and continue. While it's ingesting the progress, it can take up to a few minutes. I want to deploy the website. So if I want to deploy my website, to deploy this application, what I need to do is click deploy and create a web app. Okay, I'm not. So again, I need to give a name to the web app and to select the description, resource group, and pricing. If I want to make it faster, I'm going to just update an existing web app. I'm going to use my subscription, Microsoft for startups, and I am going to choose an existing web app. I don't need the chat history right now, and I'm going to deploy the app. It will take up to 10 minutes, which I'm going to show you more demos. But once it's going to be ready, I will be able to click launch on this button, and I can send this website, this Japan agent trip helper, to all of my friends and people in the company, and they can start testing it. Okay, while it's ingest the data, I am going to show you the Speech Studio. So let's say that I want to give my app more capabilities. So let's start with something really cool, and I'm going to speak Japanese. Although I don't really know Japanese, but while I'm going to be in the trip, probably in Japan, people will speak Japanese. So let's choose Japanese. Let's let him speak, and let's do it live. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today.
皆さん、こんにちは。本日はよろしくお願いいたします。
Okay, you can see while I'm speaking, is actually subscribing what I'm saying, and it is translating it live. So now you can see that you can configure.
皆さん、こんにちは。 本日はよろしくお願いいたします。OK、私が話している。
So you understand the point. Let me just do it once without stopping. So thank you today for coming to this lecture. This is super exciting for us at Microsoft. Thank you very much.
本日はお忙しい中、お集まりいただきありがとうございます。これはマイクロソフトにとって非常にエキサイティングなことです。ありがとうございました。
So how can I use it in my own application? Great. There is a sample code over here and a documentation, and you can just take the APIs, and we'll see in the prompt flow how we can add this into our flow. And there is the second question is always, how can I use it and how much does it cost? So on every product that we see, on the top shelf, we'll see the sample examples and how we can use it in documentation. Well, how we can try it to see that it actually works live and do whatever we want it to do, and it's in good quality. And then we can review the pricing and go to Azure Speech Services pricing or have a pricing calculator, but because eventually we want to create profitable businesses. Again, under Microsoft for Startup, we're going to get $150,000 to use all of the services for free. So you can see here the pricing and everything. So it's free for the first 10,000 transactions and so on. I'm not going to get into the exact money right now, but I know it's an important question. How much does it going to cost me eventually? So now, after I spoke Japanese, you can do captioning with speech to text. You can also create an analytics of conversation. Nadir showed before how you can take a call from a car accident into an insurance company. But for people that used GDPR and sensitive information, you need to remove the PII, the personal information. So everything is been done for you for free. You can also use it for more advanced application. You can now also create a chat, an avatar that will speak for you. It's super easy to deploy. I'm not going to show you today how to do it, but again, it's super simple. You can see it here.
What are the differences between the Surface Pro and Surface Go product lines?
The Surface Pro is more powerful with a larger display, while the Surface Go is smaller, more portable, and has a lower price point.
Which one best suits students?
The Surface Go is best suited for students because of its portability and affordability.
Any special pricing options for students?
Yes, Microsoft offers special discounts and pricing for students and educators on the Surface Go and other devices through their education store.
So you can easily add this virtual assistant to your web page and make the experience much more interesting. You can deploy another foundation model, Whisper model. We saw the real-time speech to text. You can also see pronunciation if you need, text to speech. You can also create a personal voice, which is exciting. I can create my own voice and just and don't be and just put my voice into text. But we're not going to see it today. But we can see right now the audio content creation, which really is really nice. So for example, if I have a text that's been created by OpenAI, let's ask him to a month with my grandmother. He finished the indexing of the data and also the website, so I can do it over here on the website itself. So this is what the basic stuff that your customer can see. Again, you don't have to use this UI. You can just take the code and put it anywhere. But this is I deployed the web app. It's now working. A month with my mother. So he knows that I'm going to Japan, and he's giving me the information. I just needed this text right now. We're going to Disneyland and Disney Sea. This is quite exciting. Let's copy paste this text here, and now I can choose the name and the voice. This would be by Eva, and this will be Andrew. And again, I can do the entire pronunciation. I can even do it in a French accent. Let's do everything in a French accent, and choose Gerard. Okay, let's see the example here.
That sounds like a wonderful plan. Here's a basic itinerary for a month-long trip to Japan with your mother.
Week 1, Tokyo.
D1 à 2, arrive in Tokyo, rest and adjust to the time difference. D3 à 4, explore Tokyo's famous districts such as Shibuya, Shinjuku, and Harajuku.
So if you need even text, you don't want to go to a recording studio, and you need even someone to voice your text in your application, you can use this studio over here and pronunciation and everything. And of course, you can create custom speech if you have some, let's say that you are working in the insurance or healthcare company, and you have special words that are used a lot, so you can create even custom ones. But let's go back to the application. So now we have indexed our data. So we can limit the response only to the data that we have embedded, but you need to see what we've actually embedded. So let's go here and see the documents. So the document, this is the document that we have embedded. There's a lot of pictures in it, a lot of text, and it shows us what we can do in Japan. It's actually from Sydney airport, and what we can do. So it was able to also take images and text. There is another studio for this. This studio called Document Intelligence Studio, and you will notice a lot of the times that you will need, for example, to process receipts or open or identify documents or health insurance card. Again, everything you can also customize to your own, but this Document Intelligence Studio works on a lot of languages, include Arabic, so you can easily deploy it. Let's take an example of receipts, because probably some of you had the pleasure of sending receipts. So it also can get handwrite and so on. Some of you are basically need to identify documents. So I don't have the resource deployed right now, so I'm not going to show you how it's working, because I don't have the time to deploy it, but I will show you how you can deploy it. So you go to your subscription. But this is basically what's happening behind the scenes. The Azure AI search is going to do the entire multimodality for you. Resource group, document intelligence, create new resource, and we can continue. Okay, select location, and let's put it near you in the UK area, South UK. And pricing, let's do the standard one, and continue. Maybe I'll have time to go back to it in the end, but this is what he did. He used Azure AI. This is a super important tool to understand. The Azure AI search is what takes all the documents that we are using and index them. It can use image, voice, language, and all, and make it possible for generative AI application to use. And it's all what was deployed under Add Your Own Data. And we can see after we can add data in a large capacity after this demo. So now if I ask him about, okay, let's delete the example. Okay, the example is not available once you have your data, because you will not use data that is not on the document about Japan. Trip to France, for example. Okay, he will not be able to work it out. Why is it stopped working right now? Sorry, I have a bug over here, so I might have to restart the process. Okay, I'm not going to fix it right now because I don't have the time for it, but there is a bug over there. I need to understand why. Usually, you don't have to limit the response for your data if you want to use, if you want it to ask to be more creative. But if you have been working with manual, for example, and you want it to be very, very accurate, and you don't want to hallucinate, you need to limit him. If it would work right now, and I'm sorry it doesn't work, we would see the data and which page we took the data from, and we see the RAG, what we've seen in exactly the other Copilot demos. Okay, I'm not going to work it right now. I'm going to just create a new one to be super quick. Just for us. And I'm going to show you now the vision capability. Now I can integrate them into the product. So unfortunately, there was some bug over there, probably because I tried to deploy the web and do the embedding all together, but I don't really know why it stopped working. I'm now creating this application, but while it's going to be open, I'm going to show you the Vision Studio. But before I'm going to show you the Vision Studio, I'm going to show you the visual question and answering. It's a nice demo when you can understand the power of the foundation model. So here you can see image being uploaded and natural language question being asked. About you can take illustrations and handwritten and ask them question and graph, and you can also upload your own images. We can take the same picture as before and ask the same question. And LC recipe and submit. And in this case, by the way, it's not going to go into the internet because not like the Copilot that we use, the over here that is connected to Azure AI, that can be easily connected to the website. It uses what OpenAI is already trained about, and we can get a nice answer. So going back for the playground, I'm going now to add vision capabilities. I will try to maybe use the data in a few seconds, but I'm going to use the Vision Studio right now. So we use the speech. We can see all the code over here on the Vision Studio code. And in the Vision Studio, we're going to see how we can handle different kind of image application and how we can custom made them. For example, how we can create custom model for medical or for retail. But let's start with the most basic one, is finding an image. So if, for example, I have a lot of images. In this example, I have 245 images of manufacturing, and I want to find, for example, that instead of asking for an helmet. Okay, I can search in the images themselves and get an answer. Currently I see that I have a bug that I don't know why all the cognitive services are down right now. So I think that I won't be able to continue showing you a live demo. I do have those on video, and I will just open the already made video, although I do like the live one. I think there is a general bug right now that doesn't allow me to use them. But what it would actually do is find the images with helmets. Let's try another one, and if it's not going to work, I'm just going to show you some videos. Okay, so I can upload any image, and this is after I found the application. Let me upload a presentation with all those videos already created, because there is currently a bug in the cognitive services, and I do want to show you how to do it. So wait a second while I am opening my backup slides. In the meanwhile, if you have question, you can ask them. Paul, if you can ask me a question in the meantime while I'm looking for the video conversation, so we won't waste people time. So it can be.
Okay,
great,
here we
great.
go. Is there a way to modify the colors and branding of the web app deployed by Azure AI Studio?
Yes, great question. You're also getting the Visual Studio code. Everything that I showed you is going to be on the Visual Studio. So you can change it. You can just take the code and put it in an application. But the short answer is yes.
Sure. Not sure if you dealt with this one already. Most of the existing company's data is in the SQL tables. Are there tools or patterns to transform that relational structured data into something more suitable for LLM input?
Sure, and I'm going to show you how to do it in a second. Yeah, but the answer is definitely a big yes, and we're going to see it today. I've found the presentation with the videos. I'm going to download it, but I'm going to answer this question until the presentation is going to go to be ready. So I'm again going to share my screen, and I'm going to answer the question. So there was a really important question, because we don't want to upload a PDF. We want to upload an entire database of our customers, of ourselves, in a very fast and secure way. And we'll also want it to be something that will continue regularly, because data is ever changing. Okay, so if I want to do it in a more pro way, we'll see afterward the prompt flow, but we need to have data, and we need to index the data using embedding. So in this data, we can create connections to data. It can be to SQL Server, no SQL Server, or whatever. And we can create new connections to all of our data needs and services, and Lake storage, and we can use Cosmos DB and so on. And after we have the data stored, we can index the data. Over here on the index side, currently there is a problem. I don't know. You know, it's since Bill Gates has the blue screen, all of our presentation has to have some bugs in them. I think it's a general bug, because I see it all across the board. It's probably because it's not supposed to affect people from outside the company, but it do sometimes happening because we are using dog food services. So here you can choose the data after you upload it and index it, and it will create an auto data ingestance. So it will keep update the data as it goes, and we are going to use it in a prompt flow, and we're going to build a very, very sophisticated scenario. But because it doesn't work right now, we are actually going to see a recording of what we were supposed to see live. So we saw the let me swap the okay. Now you can see the screen. We have deployed the app. We launched the new web app. We show that it's actually working, and this is the deployment part. We have deployed the website. Let me just go to the next slide, because we already saw it. Okay, so we want to add our own data. We saw we can add our own data. Let's play the recording. So we are adding our data source. We, in this case, upload the file, if you remember the Japan trip file. And we created an index, and we choose the embedding model. It was a text embedding ADA. And we created the index name. Upload the file, and we have created the index. So we already seen it, because I'm using recording and not live application, because there currently a bug. So we need to see some stuff that we already did, but this is the file. We used the hybrid and vector approach because we wanted to use semantic search. If you remember the example about elephants as struct, ingestance, and now you can start chatting and asking for Japan with 2 kids, and you can see in the answers that it will give you the location which you took the answer from. Okay, so you can see the numbers. You see number 1, number 2, the references over there. You get it just by using our infrastructure. Number 3, and once you click on the reference as a user, you can see them and you can understand if the answer was exactly what you wanted. So this is a really nice feature that you can use out of the box. Okay, now let's move to the next slide. Okay, now we want to add vision capabilities. So we saw some of those vision capabilities, and we are going to the Vision Studio. In the Vision Studio, we are going to select first the image retrieval part. The image retrieval part is the ones that we just saw that can search for a lot of pictures in a stack of pictures. Sometimes you have more than 245 images. You can upload your own images, of course. You can get access to the APIs, and you can create custom questions. For example, you can look for yellow shirt. You get all the yellow shirts in the retail demo. There is 265 images of pictures. After you find the image that you want, you can go and use the dense image file. And in this example, we're going to use sushi. Well, this is the JSON that you are getting. In order to make it faster, we're just going to copy paste the JSON, and we added to the master and to the system prompt that you can now get JSON. And what it does with the JSON, it get back information about the Japanese food and history of the food. Okay, so we can see it over here. So this is how we can easily created a multimodal approach. We took an image. It's very easy to do it by APIs. Just copy paste the output. This is I can use it by the SDK, of course. We took the output as a JSON and use it to get answers in our chatbot. Can you also do it with video? Let's see, for example, the retail demo. There is in these images there is a part of milk being split on the floor, and even coffee. You can see where the coffee was split in each sections. The video capabilities of Azure are really strong, and combined with ChatGPT can create a lot of innovations. So you can also show me remove the footballs in the beginning. So this is how you can also use the Lego piece by yourself. You can remove a background. You can remove object from the floor. Again, all these APIs are really easy to use and really easy to deploy. And you can also use spatial analysis and face analysis and so much more. But most importantly, you want to customize. Sometimes you want to customize your model. And this is something that I want to show. This is really nice. So let me show you how you can customize images. Because we're using foundation model, this is super easy. Because at the past, if you wanted to create a customized image, it would be very expensive. You will need a lot of images and a lot of videos. But currently, you just need to use 50 images in order to customize what you want to do. Let's see a good example.
In fact, let me show you how easy it is to train a custom model using the Azure Vision Studio. In my case, I want to train the model to detect quadcopter-style drones. In advance, I've created an image dataset in blob storage, and with the images loaded, I can label them by selecting the object and tagging the images with drone labels. I'll do that a few times, and once more. And now that I'm finished with labeling, I'll go back to Vision Studio to import the labeling data, which uses the common COCO file format. From there, I can import that file into the studio, point to the file, my other parameters, and confirm. Now, with the training data labeled, I can head over to custom models and start the model training. So I'll start the training process by giving the model a name. I'll select an object detection model and provide it with my custom training dataset. And this is a small dataset, so I'll choose the smallest training budget, then review and start training. Once the model is trained, it produces a report with metrics that help me understand the model's accuracy. Now I'm going to test out the model I just trained, and I'll use a drone picture that was not in the original training set. And you'll see it's able to find the drone in the image.
So it's super easy to do it because of foundation model, because of the revolutions that we spoke about it at the beginning. So we saw the speech capabilities, and now let's see how we can actually deploy it. So this is super important because everything that we did so far was the prototyping part, which Adir talked about in the life cycle of the application. And now we want to scale the application. I think that everything is currently working, but I don't want to try it. I'm afraid right now. So I'm just going to show you recordings from now on. But you can go and open FromFlow, okay, just from over here. And this is really nice technology. This is when you want to scale. So you understand what you want to do, you test it, you see the vision, speech capabilities, and now you want to integrate your code, your data, and you want to do it at scale, and you don't want to just use Azure OpenAI, you want to test more APIs. So creating a POM flow from this section is super easy, and it will create a flow in seconds, but because currently something is not working, I'm going to show you the recordings. So this is where the full life cycle starts from. So let's go over here, and after this is the data that we added. If you remember before, you can add it from SQL servers, from wherever your data is, from data lakes and so on. We already spoke about the filter creations and how you can enable. We talked about customer neural voice. You can create your own voice. This is something really nice. But we want currently to. We spoke about the model context, so I'm going to use. And this is not the right video. This is the right video. So we've created the POM flow, and this is how the POM flow looks like. Okay, we have everything that we just did on the UI in a flow section, and we can choose here which algorithm we wanted to use. If we wanted to use GPT 3.5 Turbo, or we wanted to use LLM 2, or whatever. So, or even if we want to use Python code and so on, we can use them. So you can see the part where we write the code over here. This is where we embed the question. So in the example with Japan, we upload the file. It auto-created this flow. And you can see the Python code over here that actually create the answers from the embedded data. Everything is auto-generated, but you can also add nodes of yourself. You don't have to just use the data or the flows that was created by you. This is the variables that you can use and flow to the other prompts or to the other section of the application. And you can easily choose and add more instances stuff. And of course, you can test it in the chat right now. And you can ask him, for example, what can I do in Osaka and where should I sleep? And what are recommended dining options in Osaka? So you're going to answer the question. It's going to show you how much time it took him. It's 3 seconds. How much token did he use? And it can show you the source if you see downstairs. This is the output. This is the logs. This is the metrics. This is the trace. This is when you want to go into scale and really want to take your application to the next stage. So the Azure POM flow is an amazing tool which you can use. And you can also create tests and evaluate what you did. You can generate tests just to see that the applications that you build can actually handle difficult questions, but you don't have to create the test by yourself. You can use our evaluation and it will create the test for you. So it's basically the entire LLM ops life cycles, and you can create a multi-model model approach. And if we are looking at the future of multimodality, so basically we can see that you can take image, text, and voice and create a video out of them. This is a nice paper published by Microsoft called Cody. We will see one last example about what Cody can do, and we will be open for questions. So just before finishing up, let me open the website and open Cody, Microsoft Cody, and show you another interesting multimodal approach. It's a really nice article if you want to see where generative AI is going to, getting a lot of those different assets. And I really like this one when you're using audio. Create audio and image and create and a new image. So you can imagine that the new modality and what people are going to expect is get every data from everywhere and not only text and use it everywhere. So if you're not on Founders Hub and you want to be on our program, you can scan this QR code or go into Founders Hub website. And now this is the time for Q&A, if I believe so. So thank you very, very much for your time.
Good stuff. Just running through some of the questions here. One here is, I've uploaded a very big PDF that contains drug information. It was actually a nursing handbook I got online and contains images and text tables, around 600 pages. The system was not answering questions properly, like what drug would treat high cholesterol. So my question is, before we upload the file into Azure storage for OpenAI to read, is there a specific document structure for the system to operate well?
So did you use Azure AI Search? Why I'm asking, because it is auto chunking the PDF, because if you're trying to embed it yourself, it will be very difficult. Some of the process is chunking the PDF into bite size, and this is part of what Azure AI Search is doing, and the document intelligence. I would use the document intelligence. Let me share my screen. It's
and yes, apparently the person in question did use Azure AI Search. They've just posted in the Q&A.
Okay, so you need to define the chunk size. I think that the problem was the chunk size of the AI search, because what I saw in other customer, it did work, but probably you need to fine tune the chunk size of the PDF, because you need to take it into smaller pieces in order to work. And I also probably if you saw that when you limit your data, probably I don't know what answers you ask or what was expected, but probably you can also play it over there. There is some fine tuning that can be done. So yeah, probably I would also go and let me show you a nice trick. When I'm having a problem and there is a difficult question I can't solve, there are two ways I can solve them. One, on Azure itself, there is a copilot that can answer difficult question, but what I'm doing is going to the copilot and ask him, Azure AI Search, how to chunk PDF, loud PDF. So it will send me to the right instructions. Maybe it will not give me the entire answer right now, but it will send me to the right Microsoft Learn website. So this is what I really like about, because Azure is a huge product and there are some niche or some use cases that won't work if won't be configured right. And currently what I'm doing is just asking ChatGPT, and usually those Microsoft Learn would work. And it can also ask a follow-up question and so more. And again, if you can see here, it changed the questions that I asked for. This is called grounding, and we didn't have time to see today, but let's see the Microsoft Learn chunking large document for vector search as solution in Azure AI Search, and it will probably be the answers that you are looking for. So this is how I use it. This is how I do it. So I know what I'm looking for, and I'm using Copilot also to answer sophisticated questions. Yes, Paula, do you have is there more questions?
Are there any limitations to how many documents you can upload per project?
No, just 16 megabyte per document. That's the limitation.
Got it.
No.
Once a chatbot has been deployed, can you change the system message in real time? And is it possible to have a record of questions answered and source data the chatbot has used?
Yes, you can enable. So I'm going to show you quickly how you can do it. So over here, if you want to change it, you just redeploy the application, because what's actually is happening, if it would work, I don't know what's the power right now in my machine, but you can see that it's just the endpoint. You don't change the endpoint at any time. I don't think that sharing my screen today will work, unfortunately, but it's the same endpoint, and when you re-upload it, nobody knows that, because they're always going to the same endpoint. So the answer is definitely yes.
What is your recommendation for storing vectors?
For what? Sorry?
What is your recommendation for storing vectors?
As for storing, okay, so we have the index part on Azure AI Studio. We can also integrate into Pinecone, and we have vector database, Azure vector database, which is just the service for that. So I would recommend one of those.
Cool. When relational data is indexed, is the structure understood such that the value can be found for a data item / primary key pair?
Sure. Yeah. This is the part. It unfortunately doesn't work. I would show you that live, but when you go to the data, you can see the value and keep out on the data index part.
Brilliant. I think that's it, to be perfectly honest. There's no more in the chat at the moment. There might be a few, but we'll try. If we've missed you out, then apologies. We'll come back and have a look in the chat or Q&A as we move forward as part of that. Anything to add, Amit? I think Adair is no longer on. So anything from your side to add before we close off?
No, just thank you everybody for your time, and sorry for having those malfunctions. But thanks God I had a recording, so the day was saved. Thank you for your patience.
Fantastic. And just from me, again, thank you very much for your time. On our side, I put the useful links back in the chat as well in terms of how you apply for Founders Hub, the ISV Success Program if you're a B2B software company in later stage, all the resources we have around AI Accelerate Build, because there's loads of great sessions as follow-up as part of that. And also there's a generative AI 12 course step for beginners session as well, which is fantastic as well. So once again, thank you very much for your time. We'll send out an email to everybody who registered with all of these links and stuff, so don't feel like you need to scribble everything down, and look forward to working with you moving forward. Many thanks.